Hello and welcome back to Vault of Arcana. But today, we're not touching wands or spells at all. We're walking straight into a ministry conference room where a very tired wizard is about to ruin someone's day. If you like this content and want to hear more, please like and subscribe to this channel. Now picture this. A robed ministry official slides a dusty folder labeled International Quidditch Governance across the table to a Muggle sports commission. FIFA meets OSHA on one side, flustered wizard on the other. The Muggle chair opens the file, sees no railings, 150-foot drop iron cannonballs with murderous intent, and just quietly reaches for the bright red violation stamp. No helmets, no harnesses, no guardrails, no time limit. It's like handing the NFL a death trap and saying, "Have fun, don't get sued." One inspector looks at the pitch diagram. So the stands are protected by vibes. Another flips to the equipment page. Bludgers are autonomous concussive spheres, and you let teenagers up there? You get the picture. By the time they get to players may be in the air for days, the liability lawyer has already passed out. I have a very simple goal today. I'm going to take Quidditch, exactly as written in the books, and rebuild it from the ground up as if real-world engineers, lawyers, and game designers had to make it work without magic. No wand-waving safety nets. No Madame Pomfrey erasing traumatic brain injury with a potion. Just physics, biology, paperwork, and a very angry insurance underwriter. So what are we actually targeting? First, the snitch problem. One tiny golden marble is worth 150 points and ends the game, which mathematically deletes most of what the other 6 players are doing. Why pass, dribble, and coordinate when your seeker is basically a nuclear button? Second, infinite match length. In canon, games can last days, which is adorable as a narrative flex and utterly illegal as an occupational hazard. Third, 0 substitutions. You get hit by a bludger at terminal velocity? Cool. Enjoy flying concussed for another 6 hours because the rules forgot you're made of meat. Then, we've got the sky-high concussion risk and broom physics that casually ignore drag, G-forces, and how human necks work. How fast can a firebolt corner before it turns Harry into a red mist? What does braking from 100 miles an hour to 0 in 3 meters do to your spine? In order to make this playable, we have to treat brooms like vehicles, not enchanted lawn chairs. And just so we're clear on tone, I love Harry Potter. You probably do too, or you wouldn't be here. But Quidditch as written is a terrible sport on paper. It's a fantastic story device and a nightmare rulebook. So this isn't just haha plot hole. This is let's dive into the magical nonsense and actually fix it with real rules, real constraints, and a version of the game you could air on ESPN without a body count. Here's the stake. If Muggles don't fix these rules, Quidditch gets banned worldwide by halftime. OSHA walks in, the World Cup walks out, so the question for everyone else that enjoys overthinking this stuff is simple. Can we save the magic of flying sports before the lawyers kill it entirely? So let's actually answer that. Can we save the magic of flying sports before the lawyers kill it? Or do we just invent wizard pickleball and go home? I have a very simple goal for this video. I'm going to treat Quidditch the way Brandon Sanderson treats magic systems. That means no more vibes-only sport. We're going to give it constraints, costs, and really annoying edge cases so it stops breaking its own stakes and starts behaving like something you could put in a rulebook. Think Sanderson's laws of magic, but instead of what can allomancy do, it's what happens when your seeker accelerates into a goalpost at 40 miles an hour on live TV. If Sanderson is our patron saint of hard magic, then the NFL and NBA rulebooks are our sacred texts of hard sports. I'm basically smashing those together with a little Rothfuss-style sympathy logic where every action has to be paid for somewhere in the system. You want magical brooms? Cool. What's the energy budget? What's the safety rating? And which insurance company is dumb enough to underwrite the Chudley cannons? Because without rules and limitations, Quidditch collapses the second you look at it. The snitch is worth 150 points, and ends the game. Mathematically, that trivializes almost every goal and warps strategy around one guy playing magical hide-and-seek while everyone else cosplays support staff. Injuries are pure plot convenience. People fall 100 feet, break every bone, and are back next chapter. And league logistics? You can't schedule a season if matches can last 5 minutes or 5 days, depending on how generous the author is feeling. So in order to turn this into a real, broadcastable Muggle sport, we need to start hard capping the nonsense. Altitude caps instead of infinite sky, for one. You don't get to just yeet yourself to cloud level. You fly inside a defined vertical zone, probably enforced by harness systems or track rigs that make sure a fall is scary, but not terminal. You get the picture. We're also going to rebalance the snitch. No more press this button to win. Think lower point value, no instant game end, maybe even a fixed window when it's live, so it becomes a high-risk power play instead of an auto-victory coupon. On top of that, we're locking in a fixed match duration, a real game clock, and actual substitution rules so players can't be trapped in the air until they age into dust. This is going to be a long-form, analytical deep dive. I'm going to go subsystem by subsystem, equipment, physics, scoring, safety, league structure, and rebuild Quidditch as if ESPN, FIFA, and a very nervous team of lawyers were in charge. How big is the stadium? What does the harness tech look like? How do concussion protocols work when you're 30 feet up? For everyone else that enjoys overthinking this stuff, the fun starts now. Because next, we're going to tackle the first big problem. How do you fake flying without actual magic and without turning your players into lawn darts? So to keep us from just flinging ideas at the sky and calling it a sport, I'm going to steal the magic video playbook and give Muggle Quidditch its own 5 laws. Same skeleton, different jersey. These are the rules we're going to beat every broom, ball, and scoring tweak against until it either behaves or gets cut. Physics first, then body, then sacrifice, then mind, then fate. Every time. You get the picture. The law of physics for Quidditch is basically what can actually move where and how fast, without real spells. So this is where we talk about harness rigs instead of brooms, drones instead of bludgers, wind resistance, fall distance, and why terminal velocity is not a fun surprise mechanic. If the tech can't exist, or it would shred the stadium, it fails physics and we have to redesign. The law of body is what your very breakable human body can survive repeatedly over a season. That means heart rates, G-forces in a dive, whiplash from sudden stops, and all the concussion protocol stuff that canon just sort of waves away while kids smash into stands at 80 miles an hour. If a rule only works when everyone is made of rubber, body is going to kill it. The law of sacrifice in a sport context is, what does it cost you to do the cool thing? Not souls or blood magic this time, but stamina, substitutions, foul trouble, equipment damage, and tactical trade-offs. You want a seeker who can chase a snitch drone for an hour? Great. What do you give up on defense? You want rocket assist boots? Cool. Enjoy the limited fuel and terrifying crash risk. The law of mind is, who knows what, when, and how hard it is to make good decisions in the chaos. This covers communication rules, line of sight, fake-out plays, information overload from trackers and HUDs, and how much a keeper can realistically process when 3 quaffles and 2 bludger drones are screaming toward them. If a strategy assumes perfect awareness, mind is going to drag it back down to human. And then the troublemaker, the law of fate. For us, fate is how randomness, officiating, and win conditions shape the whole meta. This is where the snitch lives. How often does it appear? How much is it worth? And can it just end the game like canon, where 150 points makes almost every goal feel like busy work? If catching one marble deletes an entire team's effort, fate is going to throw a flag. Process-wise, here's how this is going to work. We take one broken Quidditch element at a time. Brooms, bludgers, the snitch, scoring, substitutions. We run it down the line. Physics first, then body, then sacrifice, then mind, then fate. Wherever it snaps, we either constrain it or rebuild it until it passes all 5. If you're here for whimsical chaos and vibes, this is about to feel wildly over-engineered. Totally fair. But for everyone else that enjoys rulebooks, sports analytics, and hard magic-style systems applied to games, this is your candy store. Let's dive into the first law and see what happens to flying when gravity actually gets evoked. So before we strap GoPros to Muggles and fire them into the sky, we have to admit something slightly uncomfortable. Canon Quidditch is already kind of a disaster. Like, even if you keep all the magic, the core game design fails almost every basic sports sanity check. I'm going to start with the big one, the snitch. In Hogwarts rules, a goal is 10 points. Catching the snitch is 150 points and instantly ends the game. That means this one tiny flying marble is worth 15 goals and also has a built-in nuclear off switch. You don't need a PhD in sports analytics to see the issue. But let's do a baby version of the math anyway. Imagine 2 evenly matched teams over a typical match. Maybe each side scores, say, 10 goals. That's 100, 100. Now the snitch appears. If your seeker catches it, you win 250 to 100. If their seeker catches it, you lose 100 to 250. In any realistic range where chasers trade goals semi-evenly, the snitch doesn't just matter, it dominates. The only time it doesn't decide the outcome is in that narrow band where you're already losing by more than 150, which almost never happens on page. So the sport collapses into who has the better seeker, with some bonus fireworks to keep the peasants entertained. And it gets worse, because there's no game clock. The match only ends when someone catches the snitch or both teams literally agree to stop. Canon games last hours, sometimes days. That's fun as a one-off gag, but try to imagine a league. How do you schedule a season when your Thursday match might end at 8:30 or next Tuesday? How do you sell broadcast rights? Welcome back to Hour 37 of Bulgaria versus Peru. The beaters have no functioning joints and half the crowd has to be at work. You get the picture. Then we have substitutions, or more accurately, the screaming absence of substitution rules. Hogwarts teams are 7 kids, no bench, no timeouts, no mid-game swaps unless someone is literally carted off by magic stretcher. Combine that with full contact bludgeoning at bone-breaking speeds, 0 meaningful safety gear, storms, dementors, cursed bludgers, and a referee who sometimes just leaves? Tonally, Hogwarts treats this like school soccer. But by the actual rules, it's a gladiatorial endurance death sport with random length marathons and a child casualty rate that would get the entire Board of Governors arrested in about 5 minutes. So when we talk about Muggle Quidditch, we're not just taking away brooms and spells for a cute cosplay league. We're taking a fundamentally broken game skeleton and asking, what would this look like if physics, biology, TV contracts, and basic child safety all got a vote? In order to do that, we have to rebalance the scoring, cap the length, add real substitution and injury protocols, and basically rebuild the whole thing from the ground up. And once we've patched it into something an actual sports commission might sanction without a murder trial, then we can ask the fun question, how far can non-magical tech push this towards the fantasy version you remember? For everyone else that enjoys rulebooks and spreadsheets, this is where it starts to get really good. So let's actually cash that check I just wrote. If we're going to fix Quidditch with real-world rules, the first law we have to bow to is physics. And physics does not care about your childhood nostalgia. No hand-waving, no the broom just goes. Every motion has to be explainable by tech you could in theory buy, weld, or horribly crowdfund. That means gravity is always on, inertia is always on, drag is always on. If you want a player to shoot upward, something has to push air down or pull them up. I'm going to keep asking, what's pushing on what? Because if we can't answer that, it's not a sport, It's a vibes-based cartoon. So, broom replacements. Option 1, harnessed zipline grids. Imagine a 3D jungle gym of steel cables over the pitch, with players clipped into trolleys on articulated arms. You get fast, straight-line dives, you get swooping turns, but you pay for it in path constraints. You can't just stop dead or strafe sideways. Great for speed chasers, kind of awful for that chaotic seeker juking you remember, but you get the picture. Option 2, drone-supported hoists. Basically, quadcopters the size of a dining table, carrying a human in a climbing harness. It sounds cool until you remember noise, downwash, battery weight, and the fact that if one motor dies, so do you. You'd need redundant rotors, auto-descent chutes, and hard caps en masse. No Hagrid on a racing rig, sorry. Option 3, suspended tracks. Think roller coaster meets overhead camera rail. The broom is a lightweight chassis hanging from a powered track that snakes around the arena. Super controllable, very TV friendly, but your movement is locked to the track designer's imagination. Defenders can literally memorize the lanes in order to camp interceptions. Option 4, vertical wind tunnel arenas. Giant skydiving tubes, maybe 4 or 6 of them, embedded in a cylindrical stadium. Players hover in the columns, then coast between them in ballistic arcs. It's incredibly physical, it's limited in horizontal range, and it turns Quidditch into this weird hybrid of handball and indoor skydiving. For everyone else that enjoys engineering nightmares, this is your playground. All of that forces altitude caps and geometry questions. How high can you go and still survive a total failure? 10 meters with airbags and nets? 20 with auto-lowering winches that sense a power drop and gently reel you down. The arena probably looks less like an open sky and more like a layered cake of catwalks, tension nets, and padded walls. So a fall is a bruised ego, not a closed casket funeral. Those choices absolutely maul the cannon speed and maneuverability. Real rigs have max acceleration, turning radii, and stall speeds. You can't pull a 90-degree turn at 100 kilometers per h without ripping a harness or a spine. And no, we can't just say jetpacks and walk away. Jet fuel is heavy, thrust is loud and hot, control is non-trivial, and you'd need either insane pilot training or a flight computer doing half the work. At that point, are you watching athletes or drones with attached humans? And once you lock in a movement system, you've quietly locked in a meta. Zipline Quidditch rewards route planning. Drone Quidditch rewards fine motor control and battery management. Wind tunnel Quidditch rewards pure strength and air awareness. Different physics, different tactics, different highlight reels. But all of this is just how they move in space. The next ugly question is, what does that motion do to the squishy meat inside the pads? Because canon Quidditch acts like G-forces are optional and concussions are a personality trait, and we're about to break that spell completely. So this is where we hit the second law, body. We did the fun part with motion. Now we have to ask what that motion does to bones, brains, and ligaments that still have to go to work on Monday. The body law is simple to say and brutal to apply. It's what the average human can survive repeatedly across a season under modern sports medicine standards. Impact speeds, G-forces, fatigue recovery windows, all that boring stuff the Hogwarts nurse apparently skipped. I'm going to treat it like a hard cap. If it would get an NFL rule changed or a Formula One driver benched, it doesn't get to be a normal Quidditch play. Let's dive into some numbers because this is where canon completely falls apart. In the books, players fall 50, 60, 100 feet off brooms, slam into stands, get bludgered off their trajectory, and mostly walk it off with a joke and a chocolate frog. In reality, an unprotected fall from 10 meters, so about 33 feet, already has a high risk of fatal head or spinal injury. You double that height, you're in, we're calling next of kin territory, not Madame Pomfrey gave me a potion. Same deal with impacts. Concussion research suggests that around 70 to 90 G on the head is where you start seeing serious traumatic brain injury. NFL helmets, even the good ones, are trying to keep hits under that. Canon Quidditch is casually throwing players into broom-to-broom collisions at what, 60, 70 miles per hour with no face protection? You get the picture. Hogwarts matches are basically snuff films with extra steps. Modern sports treat this as a design problem, not a vibe. Helmets have certification standards. Shoulder pads are engineered to spread force. You get concussion protocols, blue tents, spotters in the booth, independent neurologists. Governing bodies like the NFL, FIFA, and the NHL keep tweaking contact rules, kickoff formations, even the shape of the ball in order to shave down catastrophic injuries and long-term brain damage. So, if our Muggle Quidditch rigs allow, say, 40 miles per hour lateral movement, body slams straight into physics, two players colliding head-on at that speed is like a car crash without a crumple zone. That means hard rules about where you're allowed to hit, what angle you can approach from, and which body parts are absolutely off limits. You want full speed intersections? Cool. Then you're wearing motorcycle grade helmets, neck stabilization, chest protectors, maybe even external airbag vests. For everyone else that enjoys having a spine, we dial the contact way down. This is the trade-off that canon never pays. The more we respect the body law, the more we have to nerf the wildest stunts. No more random 50-foot broom tackles. No more seekers getting blindsided into stone walls every other page. So what do we sacrifice and what do we keep in order to still feel like Quidditch? That's where the next law kicks in. That's where the third law kicks in. Sacrifice. If physics and body tell you what you can't get away with, sacrifice is the one that says, okay, you can do the cool thing, but what are you willing to pay for it? So I'm going to define it really bluntly. Every powerful move, every spicy strategy in Muggle Quidditch has to have a clear cost. Energy, risk of injury, positional disadvantage, burning a limited resource like timeouts or video challenges, you get the picture. If a tactic is pure upside, no fatigue, no danger, no trade-off, it doesn't belong in this sport. That's just free magic with a broom-shaped hat on. Contrast that with canon. Seekers basically yeet themselves after the snitch with almost no downside. Harry gets hit by bludgers, crashes, falls 50 feet, and Madame Pomfrey just pops him back together overnight. Broken arm? Regrown. Concussion? What concussion? The entire system quietly deletes sacrifice from the equation, which is why so many Quidditch matches feel like chaos first, strategy second. In a real league, you can't do that. You need sacrifice baked into the rules. So let's dive into some concrete mechanics. First, fatigue. You run a shift system like hockey. Maybe 2-minute max shifts in full throttle harness mode before you're forced to sub, with a hard cap on total substitutions per quarter. Want your seekers sprinting after every half-chance snitch drone? Cool, but they'll be gassed when it actually matters. Second, penalty risk. Reckless flying, cutting across someone's line at high speed, diving through traffic, weaponized body checks, shouldn't just be, haha, Quidditch is brutal. It's yellow cards, power plays, maybe even automatic penalty shots. You can absolutely send your chaser on a suicide dive to strip the quaffle, but if they clip a harness or cause a spin out, you're down a player for 2 minutes. Third, limited use tactical plays. You get, say, 2 overclock calls per game, where your team can temporarily unlock a faster harness profile or a coordinated drone pattern. When you trigger it, the system tracks extra wear and tear. Use it too early and your hardware runs hotter and less stable in the fourth quarter. For everyone else that enjoys video games, think ultimates with cooldowns and durability loss. Now, sacrifice really comes alive when you mash it up with physics and body. Choosing a faster harness mode ramps up G-forces, which spikes both fatigue and injury risk. You can set the team to cruise for safe possession play, or flip to burner mode for a last-second snitch chase that might literally leave your seeker seeing tunnel vision at 6G. Do you pull that lever in the first half? Or do you save your players' necks, kind of literally, for the final 2 minutes? Quick pattern interrupt. Imagine a coach with a challenge flag in Quidditch. You throw it to contest a borderline snitch catch. If you're wrong, you lose your last timeout and your captain has to sit a shift. Suddenly, even arguing with the ref has a body on the line. And this is where I think the canon game really falls apart. Catching the snitch is a giant, game-warping event with almost no associated sacrifice. If Harry misses, nothing really happens except mild embarrassment and a few more laps around the pitch. In our version, going for that game changer should always put something at risk. Your stamina budget, your lineup, your safety, your future options. Because we're about to rebalance the snitch and the entire scoring system. And I want you thinking about it like this. If one tiny golden object can swing a match, it should never be a free roll. When we rewrite those numbers in the next section, sacrifice is going to be the backbone that keeps the whole meta from collapsing into just chase the shiny thing. So once you price the shiny thing with sacrifice, you hit the next problem. Who actually knows what and when and what they're allowed to do about it? This is the fourth law. Mind. Not telepathy, not occlumency, just the boring, brutal stuff that decides real games. Sightlines, comms, coaching, and how clear the refs are when they blow everything up. Mind is basically the information layer of the sport. Who can see the snitch drone feed? Who can talk to whom during play? Whether the beaters get live bludger tracking data or just guessing based on vibes. In other words, we're going to treat awareness like another resource, right next to stamina and point totals. And once you do that, you suddenly get an actual Quidditch meta instead of Harry fly vaguely that way. Canon is so weird about this. We almost never see visible coaching during matches. Wood gives a locker room speech, then vanishes like Dumbledore at a parent-teacher conference. No headsets, no sideline tablets. Barely any set plays beyond Weasley is our king, I guess? Tactics are boiled down to score more goals and catch the snitch, which is like describing the NBA as put ball in hoop and walking away. You get the picture. If Muggles run this, that's gone. I'm going to give each team a designated coaching box, NFL style, with tablet access to broadcast angles and limited talk time. Players get bone conduction headsets or, for lower tiers, standardized hand signals that are actually written into the rulebook so refs and fans can decode them. We add VAR-style video review for goals, bludger fouls, and contested snitch catches, plus clear standardized referee signals so you don't need a newt in divination to know what just happened. But the fun part is not infinite information for everyone. The fun part is deliberate constraints. Maybe seekers don't get full snitch location info. Only the coach sees the drone's GPS, and they're allowed, say, 3 10-second ping windows per period. Do you burn one early to secure a lead, or save them for a desperate comeback? Maybe chasers can get a quaffle-only HUD overlay, but if you enable that, you lose automated bludger alerts, and your beaters are suddenly playing whack-a-mole by feel. This is where you can sort of fork the sport into playstyles. One team builds a radar comp that tracks everything, but tires their coach's brain out managing comms. Another runs a knife fight comp. Minimal data, hyper-trained players who just read the field. For everyone else that enjoys yelling at screens, this is catnip because bad information decisions become visible and memeable. And notice what this sets up. Once you have structured comms, replay angles, and clear ref signals, you don't just make teams smarter, you make the sport watchable. Mind is going to be the bridge into broadcasting, fan engagement, fantasy leagues, all of it. Because if we want a Muggle Quidditch league that can actually compete with the NFL, we have to sell its complexity to viewers without making them read Hogwarts: A History first. So next, let's dive into how you point cameras at this chaos, how you package those mind constraints into graphics and commentary, and how you turn nerdy broom game into something that casuals can follow in under 5 minutes. So we've talked about cameras and commentary and making this thing watchable. Cool, But all of that dies instantly if the actual win condition feels like a coin flip strapped to a Roomba with wings. Let's dive into the fifth law, fate. For this sport, fate is basically the mix of randomness, rare events, and win conditions that decide who actually wins. How much is long-term team skill? How much is short bursts of individual brilliance? And how much is, well, our seeker tripped into a golden marble? You get the picture? Canon Quidditch fate is completely broken. The snitch is worth 150 points and ends the game on capture. That means one event is both a nuclear bomb of scoring and the off switch for the entire match. You can dominate for 3 hours, be up 140 to 10, and still lose because their seeker is having a main character moment. Why run complex tactics or train your chasers when the real rule is draft crumb and pray? Real sports almost never do this. A Hail Mary in football is huge, but it doesn't secretly count for 20 touchdowns and auto-end the Super Bowl. A buzzer beater in basketball ends the game because the clock ends, not because the ball is magical and the rules worship it. So I'm going to treat fate as the law that says no single button press should delete an entire team's work unless that was the clearly telegraphed point of the whole game. So how do we uncurse the snitch without making it boring? Core redesign goal number 1. Chop the point value, make it a nice chunk, not a war crime. 10, 20, maybe 30 points in a game where goals are worth 10. Core goal number 2, decouple it from the auto end. You shouldn't be able to be down by triple digits, grab one shiny bug, and walk off like you solved sports. Core goal number 3, regular scoring has to matter all the way to the final whistle. If your chasers are dropping 30 goals, that should actually mean something. That gives us a couple fate models to play with. Model 1, snitch as a bonus objective. It's just extra points, like a power play or a high-value target in a video game mode. Catch it, get a bump, game keeps going. Model 2, time-based games. 2 30-minute halves, clock is king, and the snitch is worth, say, 20 points whenever you catch it. No auto-end. Model 3, multi-snitch chaos. Several smaller snitches worth fewer points each, released at intervals so that luck gets spread out and you can't win on one lucky dive. For everyone else that enjoys thinking about this like a game designer, you can already see the trade-offs. Does a low-value snitch make seekers irrelevant? Does a multi-snitch format turn into Mario Kart with broomsticks? How do these interact with the laws of physics, body, mind, and sacrifice we already set up? Because next, we're going to start stress testing these fate models one by one, and one of them breaks the sport in a way that's way worse than canon. So, before we go full sci-fi death arena with harnesses and drones, we should admit something slightly embarrassing. Muggles have already tried to make Quidditch work. Like, a lot. If you've ever seen a bunch of college kids sprinting around a field with PVC pipes between their legs, looking way too intense for a cosplay meetup, that's quadball. In a real Muggle league, that falls apart instantly. Fatigue is physics and body rolled into one. Heart rate, lactic acid, reaction time. You get the picture. You cannot have people sprinting and colliding in 3D space for an hour with no structured rest. So I'm going to expand rosters. Think soccer depth with a bit of hockey flavor, a full starting 7 plus a meaningful bench, enough for tactical swaps, injury cover, and planned rotations, not just our seeker exploded. Grab a first year. Positions also have to grow up under our new physics. Chasers aren't just point farmers anymore. They're 3D playmakers, running vertical pick and rolls, using altitude as spacing, burning serious calories every time they accelerate or change direction. Beaters become area control specialists, not cartoon snipers. Their job is to shape safe lanes, deny zones, and in order to not liquefy anyone, they're working with capped force bludgers and strict targeting rules. Keepers get a defined movement zone, like a hybrid between a hockey goalie crease and a soccer box, so they can't just camp the hoops or wander off on a vibes-based adventure. And seekers? Under our fixed snitch value, they finally get a real risk-reward profile. You want to peel your seeker off defense and burn their stamina to chase a late snitch? Cool. That's a strategic gamble, not an auto-win button. For everyone else that enjoys number crunching, this is where teams start building different archetypes. Endurance seekers versus sprinter seekers, defensive chasers versus press chasers. You get the idea. Now, substitutions. Do we allow hockey-style line changes where people hop in and out mid-play? Or do we go closer to soccer where swaps only happen on stoppages and each one is precious? Pattern interrupt. Imagine a full beater line change while play is live and a bludger is crossing the field. Chaos. Fun chaos, but also lawsuit chaos. So I'm capping it. On-the-fly subs only in clearly marked safe zones. Or we keep it to stoppage-only swaps with a limited number of shifts per player to model fatigue. Injury replacements get their own rule set. You can always replace a medically ruled out player, but that slot is locked. No fake cramp fresh seeker nonsense. Substitutions become a resource to manage risk and body, not an afterthought when someone breaks an arm. And once rosters are real and benches matter, you unlock the next question. How does a coach actually build a game plan around all this? And what does the meta look like when teams start min-maxing roles? So now that coaches actually have a roster to play with, we have to talk about the thing that decides whether any of that strategy matters. How the game is called. Because right now, canon Quidditch is basically a guy in star-shaped glasses vibes it out while teenagers commit aerial war crimes. Let's dive into how bad it is first. We get this list of famous fouls at the World Cup. Blatching, stooging, blagging, you get the picture. And it sounds fun until you realize nobody, including Rowling, seems to know where the lines actually are. Stooging is illegal, except the twins do it constantly. Blatching is flying with intent to collide, which is literally every Slytherin play. And dangerous flying? People are falling 50 feet off brooms and the ref is like, play on. So as a Muggle league, I'm going to sort that chaos into 3 clean buckets. Bucket 1 is safety violations. If you endanger someone's body, that's not a cute joke, that's a hard rule. Full speed hits to the head, undercutting someone's harness so they spin out, ramming from behind at certain angles, or messing with another player's rig or drone line, automatic safety foul. You can still have big tackles, but they're defined, like in rugby, legal contact zones, no targeting the spine, no yanking someone's harness, so they pendulum into a goalpost. Bucket 2 is tactical fouls. This is your holding, grabbing the broom shaft, obstruction, boxing out a chaser with no play on the ball, or crowding the snitch runner so your seeker gets a free lane. These don't usually maim anybody, but they break the competitive puzzle. And then bucket 3 is sportsmanship fouls. Taunting screaming spells in someone's face to fake cast them, celebrating on top of a downed opponent, or coordinated flopping to draw calls. For everyone else that enjoys a bit of drama, you can still chirp, but you can't weaponize humiliation. Once you have categories, you can attach predictable penalties. Light tactical foul, free shot on goal from a marked arc, like a Quidditch penalty kick. Serious safety violation, 2-minute power play where your team flies a player down, hockey style. Repeated or egregious safety fouls put you in an actual penalty box on the sideline, harness locked, heart rate coming down while your coach yells at you. And for nuclear stuff, blatant snitch interference, intentional harness sabotage, or concussing someone away from the play, you're looking at point deductions and automatic suspensions. You don't just shrug off a Malfoy-level cheap shot because it's narratively funny. To keep that from turning into ref cosplay DMing, we bring in VAR. Every goal and every snitch capture gets automatic video review from a centralized booth that can see every angle. Did the quaffle fully cross the plane? Was the seeker's hand actually on the snitch before they got bodied? Did the beater's hit land before or after? Coaches get, say, 2 challenges per game to contest calls on big plays. Lose the challenge, you lose a timeout or a sub window. Win it, the call flips, and maybe the other team eats a minor penalty for the thing you just proved. This nails our mind and fate problems. Players know exactly what actions map to what consequences. There's no secret ref headcanon about spirit of the game that only shows up when the underdog is about to win. Fate isn't a random lightning bolt of ref bias, it's the aggregate of clear rules plus human risk-taking. You can still have that one insane snitch dive that flips the match, but if it stands, it's because it survived slow-mo replay and 3 officials arguing about frame counts, not because one wizard felt like it. And once fouls are real and reviewable, the meta shifts again. Do you build an aggressive, penalty-prone team and live on the edge? Or a disciplined squad that weaponizes power plays and challenges? That's where game plans start to look like actual playbooks, not just get a good seeker and pray. And once you have real refs and real reviews, you run smack into the next problem. Everybody in this sport is basically riding a missile while dressed for a high school play. Canon Quidditch gear is robes, maybe gloves, and vibes. That's it. You're 50 feet up, doing 60 miles an hour, and the safety plan is a scarf. You get the picture. In the books, people fall off brooms constantly. Bludgers break arms. Harry eats Dementor-induced dirt from like 100 feet up. And the response from the adults is basically, walk it off, kid. Here's some chocolate. If Muggles tried to sanction that, the World Cup would be shut down before the pregame show finished. So, I'm going to hard pivot us into gear standards. If this is a real Muggle league, we start with helmets, not cute little leather caps, actual certified helmets with full face protection, impact ratings, and probably a neck stabilizing collar, because you're not just falling, you're also getting whiplashed around by the harness system we built earlier. Think somewhere between hockey goalie and fighter pilot, not windswept teen heartthrob. Next layer, upper body armor. At minimum, shoulder and chest padding with a built-in sternum plate, because a rogue bludger drone to the ribs is not a fun time. Then harness integrated back protection, like a spine guard that ties directly into the flying rig, so the force is spread out when you slam into the goal hoop or the side netting. Forearm and leg guards stay optional for pros who want more agility. But junior leagues and amateurs, those are probably mandatory until you prove you're not going to lawn dart yourself every possession. Now the design problem. How do you do all that without turning everyone into identical crash test dummies? Fans need to recognize players, cameras need to see faces, sponsors want logos, and we still want a bit of wizardy aesthetic, right? So teams are going to lean hard into custom shells, transparent visors with HUD overlays, layered robes printed directly onto armor panels, that sort of thing. Think enchanted-looking armor, but it's actually just smart composites and LEDs. For everyone else that enjoys cosplay, this is your Super Bowl. But none of this matters if we ignore brains. Modern sports live and die on concussion protocols, and Quidditch is basically a concussion generator with goalposts. So we steal from the NFL and the NHL. Any head impact above a certain G-force, any player who hits the barrier and doesn't pop up, automatic removal for evaluation. No coach override, no but I feel fine. Independent medical staff only, with the power to bench a star seeker in the final minute. And in order to really respect the law of body and the law of sacrifice, we don't let teams optimize away safety. You can choose lighter gear to shave milliseconds off a dive, sure, but the league sets strict minimum protection standards and regular inspections. If you want to gamble your career on a thinner helmet, you're not doing it in our stadium. Because once we lock in gear and protocols, the next big question is, how do you actually train a human to survive this sport without magic healing them every weekend? So gear and protocols get you to the starting line. They do not magically stop people from eating turf at 25 miles an hour. Even with our safer design, you're still strapping humans to moving hardware and telling them to joust in 3 dimensions. You're going to get sprained ankles from bad landings, minor concussions from head whiplash when a drone breaks too hard, harness abrasions on hips and shoulders, and, every so often, an old-fashioned broken arm when 2 chasers forget they are not in fact CGI. You get the picture. This is closer to rugby on zipline than tag. So how do real sports handle that level of baked-in risk? They don't shrug and say, "Walk it off, kid." They track injury data like it's exam scores at Hogwarts. In the NFL, rule tweaks followed concussion spikes. In rugby and hockey, you see mandatory safety audits, independent doctors on the sideline, and ongoing research partnerships with medical schools that live and breathe brain scans. I'm going to steal that whole playbook. Our Quidditch League would log every collision, every suspected concussion, every time a beater's back clips a shoulder, and then feed that into annual rules reviews. If we notice that keepers are racking up wrist fractures on sideways dives, that's a rules meeting. If seeker collisions spike after we buff Snitch rewards, that's a rules meeting. This is going to feel less like wizard sport and more like OS patch notes, where version 1.4 quietly nerfs blindside tackles. Now, legal, because we're not in Dumbledore's whimsical liability void anymore. In order to get insurance, a league has to prove it's not running a televised group suicide spell. That means documented safety standards, certified equipment, trained officials, medical staff, and clear evidence that you updated your rules when you learned something was dangerous. Waivers do exist, but they're not a magic shield. You can't just slap "you might die lol" on a form and be done. You have to show you took reasonable steps to prevent foreseeable harm. Magic did it is not a valid defense when your opposing counsel has slow motion replay and 3 orthopedic surgeons. And here's the fun feedback loop. Legal pressure becomes game design pressure. Insurers will absolutely say, "We'll cover you, but only if you cap contact above a certain speed." Mandate impact-rated helmets and install sensors that auto-flag dangerous G-forces. So suddenly, helmets have accelerometers that ping the ref if your head takes a big hit. Drones throttle down automatically in congested airspace, and repeat offenders for illegal contact get suspended not just by the league, but by the people underwriting the stadium. If Hogwarts had to deal with that, Quidditch as written is cancelled by the end of Chamber of Secrets. A rogue bludger tries to kill a 12-year-old, the snitch dives him into a bone removal spell, and some poor ministry lawyer has a stroke. Which raises the next question. If you can't lean on magic healing or narrative immunity, what does training for this sport actually look like when your body has to pay every bill? So this is where Quidditch stops being fun after school club and starts looking like a weird hybrid of F1, aerial gymnastics, and getting repeatedly hit with baseballs at 80 miles an hour. Canon Hogwarts is like 2 practices a week, do some laps, maybe Oliver Wood yells at you a bit. Our version? You're a vertical harness pro athlete whose spine has a performance review. Let's dive into what that actually means. In canon, Harry can basically roll into tryouts with broom talent and plot armor. Under our rules, raw talent gets you exactly one thing: an invite to throw up in preseason conditioning. Because once you strap into a dynamic harness system that can yank you 10 meters up and sideways in half a second, your body, your inner ear, and your lunch are all filing complaints. Chasers first, because they finally matter as much as seekers. These are your 3-dimensional midfielders. They're living in a constantly shifting 3D lane map, so they hammer core strength, rotational power, and spatial awareness. I'm going to have them doing anti-gravity plank variations, medicine ball twists while suspended, and VR drills where the pitch is a moving maze. If you can't track 3 quaffle lanes, 2 beaters, in your own vertical line at once, you're just cardio with a jersey. Beaters train like mix between baseball infielders and goalies on caffeine. Reaction time is king. They're on ball machines firing foam bludger rounds from random angles, while the harness jerks them around, practicing bat control so they can redirect, not just block. Think tiny adjustments. Half-meter deflection to your chaser, not full send into the stands. And because we're not allowed to casually concuss children anymore, their job is as much angle management as hit the thing. Seekers finally have to earn their drama. Instead of Harry's good because he is, they're doing visual tracking drills, saccade training, and repeated 10-second max effort sprints in full gear. Catching the snitch is now a sprint event layered on top of a full game, so they condition like 400-meter runners who also live on a roller coaster. Can you still explode after 40 minutes of micro-adjustments and fake-outs? That's the job. Then, we add the harness tax. Neck and back strength become non-negotiable because the rig is constantly loading and unloading your spine. Athletes are doing isometric neck holds, scapular stability work, and grip training until their forearms cry. Suspended play also means mild G-forces and whip turns, so you get acclimation sessions, short, sharp direction changes with heart rate monitors, and very large buckets. You get the picture. Off-season, nobody just goes home. They're in film study breaking down flight lines, in strategy sessions tweaking set plays, and in cross-training. Gymnastics for air awareness, parkour for movement problem solving, aerial silks for body control and straps. For everyone else that enjoys watching spreadsheets, this is where the mind and sacrifice laws sneak in. You sacrifice time, comfort, and a normal social life in order to squeeze out a 1% edge. Quick pattern interrupt. What happens if a team skips the nerd stuff and just vibes on talent? They become Canon Gryffindor. Fun, chaotic, wildly inconsistent. Our league rewards disciplined, data-driven prep, GPS trackers and harnesses, impact sensors and bludgers, sleep and nutrition monitored like any top sport. The magic is gone, but the rules of body and mind are fully online. And once you've built these monsters of vertical conditioning, the next question is obvious. What kind of tactics does a sport like this actually produce when nobody can just yeet a snitch and go home? So now that we've strapped 8 cardio-obsessed maniacs into 1,000-pound climbing harnesses, we have to ask the fun question. What does actual strategy look like when you can't just yeet a snitch and let narrative convenience do the rest? This is where it stops being a movie prop and starts being a real sport with a meta that coaches can obsess over at 3 a.m. Let's dive into the basic shapes. Offense in a 3D arena is going to live and die on vertical stacking. Picture a high chaser as the ceiling, one in the mid-band, one skimming low. Now you can run pick and rolls in 3 layers. High chaser drags a defender up, mid chaser cuts underneath into the gap, low chaser is the safety valve for a reset. Rotate those 3 into a constantly spinning triangle, and you've basically invented basketball motion offense, but in Z-axis hard mode. Defense mirrors that with layered zones. You get a deep safety park near the hoops, and mid-ring that bumps cutters, and an aggressive front ring trying to disrupt passes before they ever get vertical. Instead of a flat 2-3 zone, you get what's basically a 1-2-2 cone in 3D. If you're more old school, you can go man-to-man, but at pro speeds, that's going to melt your player's lungs by halftime. Beaters are the ones who really weaponize space. With only 2 bludgers in a fixed volume, zoning is everything. One beater might sit high and hammer bludgers down into a no-fly column in front of the hoops, forcing chasers to either swing wide or eat rubber. The other can mirror the ball, playing bodyguard. During snitch windows, that flips. Both beaters peel off into escort duty, using bludgers like mobile screens to create a safe tunnel for their seeker, or to harass the enemy seeker every time they line up a grab. And because we're adding real rules and real refs, you absolutely get penalty baiting. I'm going to have coaches teaching chasers to cut just close enough that an overamped beater clips the head, draws a flag, and hands you a power play. You get the picture. This stops being chaos and starts looking like hockey in the sky. Seekers, under our fixed value non-instant win snitch, finally have to think. Do you hard commit to a risky chase when you're up 2 goals, or fake a sprint to drag both beaters and the opposing seeker out of the scoring lane while your chasers run a 3-on-2? If you're down big, maybe your seeker just becomes a hybrid defender, doubling the opposing star chaser and only touching the snitch during set plays your coach has scripted. That's where coaching philosophies diverge. Some teams are going to be fast break psychos, sprinting every rebound, sending their seeker on constant decoy routes and trusting conditioning and chaos to generate more chances. Others will run a slow, control-oriented game, walking the ball up, parking in a tight vertical stack, milking the clock, and hunting for one perfect snitch window per quarter. And over all of that sits mind and fate. The best teams aren't just the ones with the flashiest seeker. They're the ones tracking stamina data live, timing when to flip from conservative zones into all-in blitzes. Gambling on whether this is the possession where you unleash the high-risk alley-oop through 3 bludgers. How do you broadcast all that without your opponents stealing it in real time? That's a whole other layer of meta, and it drags us straight into how leagues, cameras, and fans would actually interact with this thing. So if we've got all this live data and spy-level camera tech flying around, you can't just have Hogwarts House Cup vibes anymore. You've basically built the NFL in the sky by accident. So let's dive into what an actual league structure looks like when your ball sport is also a low-orbit workplace hazard. First, we move beyond school play. No more Gryffindor versus Slytherin, and you get the picture. I'm going to break it into city or franchise teams, because governments are not letting random boarding schools run high-velocity drone harnesses unsupervised. Think London Skyhawks, Tokyo Typhoons, Sao Paulo Storm, each as a franchise in a continental conference. And below that, you get regional divisions or even a promotion/relegation pyramid for everyone else that enjoys lower-tier chaos. You want your local semi-pro club clawing their way up to the Premier Flight League? Cool. They just have to survive the insurance audit. Now, season design. You cannot run 82 games like basketball when every match is repeated high-G acceleration and full contact mid-air collisions. Under our law of body and sacrifice, that's just a slow-motion meat grinder. So I think we cap the top league at, say, 24 to 30 regular season games. Home and away pairs inside your division, a few cross-conference games, and mandated rest windows. You get, maybe, 1 match a week, with at least 5 full days between starts for any player who logs above a certain impact and exertion score from their suit telemetry. Travel becomes a whole thing because these arenas are tech-heavy monsters. You don't just roll up with a duffel bag. You're flying with calibrated harnesses, synced drones, onboard AI refs, the whole spell-less magic circus. That means longer road trips, but fewer of them. 2-week swings where a team plays 3 cities that share compatible infrastructure. Then, back home for a long recovery block. The league schedule is basically built in order to keep the maintenance crews from rioting. For playoffs, we need drama without killing people. No 7-game marathons. Early rounds are 2-leg aggregate series. 1 home, 1 away, total points across both wins. If that ties, you go to a short overtime with fatigue-weighted substitutions and maybe a golden possession instead of sudden death, so one lucky snitch-style moment doesn't erase 40 minutes of solid play. Finals could be a best of 3, max, with a full week between games and strict caps on total minutes per player. Then you scale it up to international, a Muggle Quidditch World Cup with standardized rules, WADA-style anti-doping, and endless cross-cultural arguments over how violent bludger contact is allowed to be. Do European leagues push for more aerial grappling while North America wants stricter concussion protocols? How do you handle a country whose domestic league still uses a higher value snitch and now has to nerf its national team? And if you think the politics of that are messy, wait until we talk about money, unions, and what happens the first time a superstar falls out of the sky on live TV. On live TV. Which brings us to the people actually watching this chaos. Because if playing Muggle Quidditch is dangerous, trying to follow it with your eyeballs is its own kind of occupational hazard. You've got full 3D movement, 3 different ball types, and like 6 micro-fights happening at once. If you just point a camera at that and say have fun, half the audience is changing the channel and the other half is getting motion sick. So the core challenge is simple. You need to make a sport that feels like a bar fight inside a beehive look readable. Not just for hardcore tactics nerds, but for everyone else that enjoys having some idea why the commentator is screaming. That means we have to design broadcasting almost like a spell. Clear inputs, clear outputs, and very strict rules on what information hits your brain at any given second. Let's dive into cameras first. I'm going to assume we steal from Formula One, the NFL, and every esports tournament with too much budget. You get a couple of fixed wide shots that show the whole vertical cylinder of play, so your brain always has a map to reset to. Then you add tracking cams on rails that can orbit at mid-height following a specific play pod, like a chaser triangle or a beater bludger duel. On top of that, you throw in drone cams for overheads. Because nothing sells, this is 30 meters up and fast, like a top-down angle where you can see the ground whipping by. And then, the fun part, player POV. Helmet cams or visor cams, but used sparingly, almost like replay magic. You don't live in them because that's just GoPro parkour nausea, but when a seeker threads a gap between two bodies in a bludger, you cut to their POV in slow motion, and suddenly you understand how insane that read was. Cameras alone don't fix the chaos though. This is where AR and HUD overlays do the heavy lifting. On broadcast, you highlight active bludgers with subtle glows and tiny trajectory tails. You give the snitch a status tag, hidden, tracked by drones, engaged north quadrant. You float player names and roles near their bodies, color-coded, and you shade soft zones of control around chaser formations, so casual viewers can see, oh, that lane just got cut off. In Stadium, you mirror that with smart jumbotrons. One panel is the classic feed, one is a live tactical diagram, icons for players, arcs for bludgers, a pulsing marker for the snitch. The scoreboard itself has to separate goal points, snitch points, and penalties into clean bands so you can glance up and instantly know, are we playing for time, for snitch, or for survival right now? And all of this loops back to the law of mind. Better information doesn't just help viewers, it upgrades commentators from describing a car crash to actually explaining strategy. You get less random chaos, more, oh, that beater deliberately pulled the bludger aggro to free the seeker. Quick thought experiment. What happens when teams start gaming the broadcast overlays themselves? Yeah, we're going to have to talk about data, cheating, and who owns the aerial tracking feeds next. So let's talk about money, because all this shiny tracking magic and anti-death harness tech doesn't appear out of nowhere. Somebody has to pay for the vertical circus. I'm going to lowball this, and it's still going to sound insane. A purpose-built indoor Quidditch cube? You're looking at like a mini NBA arena plus a rock climbing gym plus a stunt studio. Construction or retrofit might be $150, $300 million once you factor in reinforced ceilings, anchor points every few meters, catwalks, winches, and those full-body harness rails. Then you've got operating costs, rigging inspections before every match, a permanent crew of rope techs, med staff who understand fall arrest trauma, and an insurance premium that makes American football look like competitive knitting. Because the actuaries are not dumb. They see 20 people sprinting through 3D space at 25 miles per hour with drones and projectiles, and immediately start adding zeros. So in order to keep this insurable, you need redundant failsafes, black box data on every fall, and probably a league-wide fund for long-term injuries baked into the CBA. On the revenue side, though, this thing is a content monster. Ticket sales are obvious, but you don't actually need 80,000 seats. You want 8 to 15K really good ones with wraparound LED boards and those AR overlays we talked about. The real money is broadcast rights and streaming subscriptions. This is the kind of sport that clips extremely well. 15-second vertical chases, slow-mo bludger near misses, heat maps of a seeker's path. You get the picture. Merch is easy too. Team robes 2.0 that are actually flight suits, replica harnesses, signature goggles, house-style scarves, without the copyright problems. And sponsorships? Every rigging manufacturer, drone company, energy drink, wearable tech brand, and betting app is lining up. This concussion was brought to you by, okay, maybe not that far, but you know someone would pitch it. What about the players actually paying rent? Realistically, career length is short. You're asking for gymnast-level core strength, parkour agility, and fighter pilot spatial awareness. Peak window is probably 20 to 30 if you're lucky, with a few freak outliers. After that, knees, shoulders, and vestibular systems start sending rude emails. So we build in a pipeline. Retired chasers become positional coaches, veteran beaters move into safety and rigging oversight, seekers slide into commentary breaking down aerial mind games for everyone else that enjoys nerding out about tactics. Compared to existing niche sports, this is basically Formula One plus esports plus Cirque du Soleil. New leagues survive by being appointment viewing for a small but rabid audience, then selling that attention very efficiently. Esports proved you can have million-dollar prize pools with stadiums that would barely register for the NFL, as long as the stream numbers are stupid. So here's the provocative bit. If we nail the tech and the camera work, does this actually outcompete some traditional sports? Soccer is elegant, basketball is fluid, but neither gives you a literal three-dimensional dogfight with live telemetry on screen. If you're a bored 14-year-old scrolling past 100 highlights, which thumbnail wins? Of course, the second this much money and data hit the system, people start optimizing for performance, for loopholes, for cheating. And that's where we have to talk about drugs, cybernetics, and how far Muggles will push their bodies to stay in the air a little longer. And once bodies start getting pushed, fandom follows. You don't pour biotech, telemetry, and broadcast money into a sport without accidentally inventing a new religion that sells nachos. Early on, it's going to look like cosplay with a rulebook. You get college kids in cheap house scarves, hand-painted, free the elf signs, and someone in a dollar store Snape wig yelling about the ref. But as soon as cities get franchises and people start growing up with their team, it shifts. The chants stop being Gryffindor and turn into Manchester on your left, time to the spiral of the pitch. Supporter groups figure out vertical tifo, banners that unroll from the rafters down the whole height of the arena, choreography that wraps around all three tiers so the camera can pan up and the whole stadium literally becomes a moving spell circle. Branding has to walk this really weird line. If you lean too hard into wizard aesthetics, you get the equivalent of a theme park restaurant trying to play in the Champions League. But if you strip all the magic out, why are we here instead of watching basketball? So I'm going to push for that subtle, magical modern look. You get the London Lions with a clean gold on crimson logo that only hints at a Gryffindor lion. The Berlin Basilisks with a stylized serpent that doubles as a flight path on the tactics feed. The Sao Paulo Comets using star charts as their pattern language. For everyone else that enjoys finding little lore jokes, you hide wand core references in the typography and make the alternate jersey a deep-cut canon gag. Once you have brands, you get rituals. Imagine pre-game broom walks where the team does a slow lap on the harness rail while fans hold their brooms up like a guard of honor, almost like a lightsaber tunnel but with way more splinters. Halftime shows? Of course they're snitch themed. You run drone swarms that trace a golden streak through the darkened arena, while kids in mini harnesses try to tag AR snitches for prizes. And rivalries basically write themselves. Anytime a lion-branded team plays a snake-branded team, the broadcast leans all the way into old house grudges, complete with traitor chants when a seeker transfers across the line. The nice thing is, because this is a Muggle league, we don't have to import the Wizarding World's blind spots. Co-ed rosters are already baked in from real-world quad ball, so we keep that and scale it up. Marketing can actually show captains and coaches who aren't just the same three photogenic white dudes. And leagues can codify inclusive language and fan codes of conduct in order to avoid the pure blood energy entirely. You want kids of every background to see themselves in the stands and in the air. And over time, all of this plugs straight back into mind and fate. Legendary Snitch grabs in overtime becomes shared trauma and shared prophecy. One arena gets a reputation as cursed because seekers keep concussing out on the same corner of the rail. A blown penalty in a World Cup final spawns a decade of conspiracy theories about rigged fate balancing. That's the moment where the sport stops just being a game and starts acting like a living mythology, which raises a slightly terrifying question. If you give that mythology to billionaires and national governments, what do they do with it? So if you hand this living mythology to billionaires and governments, what do they actually build? They build a product, and to sell a product, you have to tell people what it feels like. So let's dive into where our fixed Muggle Quidditch actually sits in the sports ecosystem you already know. At ground level, quaffle play is basically basketball that got bitten by a radioactive handball. You've got set plays, pick and roll style screens, fast breaks, and that constant decision of drive to the hoops or kick it out to the wing. The passing lanes look like NBA half-court offense, but because we've got 3 hoops at different heights and a 360-degree approach, it also starts to feel like attacking a goal in water polo. You're reading space, not just lines on a field. You get the picture. Bludgers are where it stops being cute wizard basketball and starts edging into dodgeball and paintball territory. A well-timed bludger isn't just damage. It's area denial. You're not just trying to hit a chaser, you're trying to make the left hoop radioactive for 5 seconds so the offense has to reroute. Think of it like a goalie that moves, is occasionally your teammate, and sometimes decides to betray you mid-play. Fun. Then the snitch. In canon, it's this game-ending nuke. In our version, it's closer to a rotating bonus objective from esports or a capture the flag side mission. I'm going to have it come online in phases, with different point values and restrictions, so seekers can't just delete the match. Early on, going for the snitch is like contesting a power-up in Overwatch. You might win the fight but lose the map. Late game, it becomes that do we go Baron or do we push mid moment from League? High risk, high narrative. What's genuinely new here is the stack. You get sustained verticality, not just jump once and land like basketball dunks. You get 3 different ball types, each obeying its own micro rules, all live at once. And you get this weird hybrid of individual and team win conditions. The Seeker can swing the score, but only if the chasers and beaters have set the stage. How many sports let one player grab a huge bonus without completely invalidating everyone else's work? In terms of pacing, I think this ends up feeling way more like hockey than American football. The clock actually runs. Possessions turn over fast. You get line changes instead of everyone stand around while we measure a first down. But layered on top of that constant motion, you have scripted hype beats when the snitch phase activates, or when a bludger power play kicks in. It's like if every hockey game guaranteed 3 overtime energy moments baked into the rules. Accessibility-wise, the basics are stupid simple. Throw the quaffle through hoops, avoid bludgers, snitch good but risky. That's the your friend dragged you to a game and you just want to cheer at the right time layer. For everyone else that enjoys overthinking things, the deep stuff lives in how teams manage altitude, tempo, and snitch timing. That's where analysts start arguing about expected snitch value on podcast. And this is why fixing the rules matters. Without balance, Quidditch is a theme park ride with extra concussions. With it, you suddenly have a sport that could sit next to basketball, soccer, and hockey as its own weird, coherent thing. But if it's that good, who gets to own it, regulate it, and maybe quietly weaponize it? So before we go any deeper into who weaponizes Quidditch, I can already see the comments loading like bludgers in the sidebar. You're ruining the magic. It's not that deep. It's a kid's book, dude. Calm down. Cool. Love you all. Also, you clicked on a video literally titled Fixing Harry Potter's Magical Plot Holes with Rules. You knew what this was. Let's talk about the ruining the magic thing, because I think that's backwards. Canon Quidditch is delightful precisely because it's so chaotic. People just yeet themselves 50 feet in the air. No helmets, no OSHA. And the scoring system is a math war crime. It's slapstick with broomsticks. That version still exists, Me poking at the snitch like a sports accountant does not retroactively reach into your childhood and confiscate your paperback. I'm gonna say this very clearly. I like Quidditch as written. It's whimsical, it's comedic, it's the narrative equivalent of giving an 11-year-old a Red Bull and a whistle and saying, invent a sport. That's part of the charm. I am not trying to get Rowling hauled in front of the International Quadball Association and cited for unsafe game design. What we're doing here is an alternate universe thought experiment. This is the timeline where, before publishing Rowling's editor goes, hey, what if we hired a sports commissioner, a physicist, and maybe a liability lawyer to sit in a room for a weekend? And they come back like, okay, we kept the vibe, but we also stopped one golden marble from deciding 90% of outcomes. You get the picture. So in order to enjoy this, you kind of have to enjoy that process. If you're here to say canon is canon, shut up, it's magic, that's totally valid as a reading experience, but it's not what this channel is doing. This channel is for everyone else that enjoys hard magic, crunchy systems, and watching familiar worlds get rebuilt with explicit costs and limits. If the phrase expected snitch value makes you curious instead of angry, you're in the right place. Quick pattern interrupt. If you're still thinking it's not that deep, cool. Let's make it that deep. Real Muggle Quidditch already had to rebrand to Quadball, write a rulebook, and deal with concussion protocols. And that's for a ground game with PVC brooms. Now imagine you add actual flight, drones, harness rigs, broadcast angles, and a snitch that isn't just whoever's best at ending the story on cue. How does that not raise fun questions? And look, I don't want just agreement in the comments. I want good faith disagreement. You hate my snitch model? Amazing. Pitch yours, make the snitch worth fewer points, or decouple it from ending the game, or turn it into a timed objective that respawns. Tell me how you'd fix substitutions, or what you'd make the commissioner ban first. Let's dive into that together. Treat this like a shared design doc, not a referendum on your childhood. Because next, we're going to take all this meta talk and actually build the Muggle infrastructure, leagues, stadiums, and the terrifying insurance forms that come with them. But before we hire lawyers and start selling season tickets, I want to try to break this thing. Like, really break it. If a sport only works on a chill Saturday scrimmage and collapses the second anything weird happens, it's not a hard rule system, it's a vibes-based birthday party. So let's dive into the classic Quidditch problem. You're down 80 with 5 minutes left. In canon, that's basically, welp, guess our seeker just doesn't catch it, which is not strategy, it's a hostage situation. In our version, the clock is fixed, the snitch is worth a swing, but not an auto win, and goal values actually matter. Being down 80 with 5 to go is bad, but not mathematically cursed. You can pull your seeker into more of a hybrid attacker role, burn your last substitution window for a fresh chaser line, and use your timeout economy to force 2 or 3 high percentage set plays. The snitch is pressure, not a nuke. Now, edge case 2. Both seekers get injured on the same play. Harness tangle, double collision. You get the picture. In a soft system, everyone kind of shrugs until Madame Pomfrey says, it's fine. Here, we hard-bake substitution and emergency stoppage. Ref sees simultaneous injury, blows the dead ball whistle, snitch drone auto holds in place, and broadcasts its GPS lock. Medical team comes in, and each side has a timed window to declare a backup seeker from their bench. No backup listed on the roster? Cool. You just voluntarily play snitch blind for the rest of the match. That's not the ref being mean, that's roster construction as a strategic spell component. What about a harness malfunction mid-snitch chase? This is where I'm going to lean on existing Sports Plus aviation rules. The second a harness reports a fault, or a player pulls the panic tab, the system yanks them into safe descent mode, and the ref calls an immediate tech timeout. If the malfunction wasn't triggered by a foul play, resets from the last control possession, and the snitch respawns to a preset altitude waypoint. If it was caused by contact outside the legal zone, that's an automatic major penalty, possible ejection, and the non-fault team gets a controlled snitch restart. We keep the golden marble impactful without rewarding, oops, I cut your brakes. Weather and environment are another fun stress test. Indoors, you get consistent air, but you also have to deal with HVAC currents and ceiling height. Outdoors, wind shear can yank harness lines like kite strings. So we cap official play to wind speeds where the auto stabilization can still keep players under a defined sway angle. And we mandate dynamic dampers on the lines. Rain? You simulate it with mist rigs and drainage, so you control slipperiness. Fog? Either you do AR helmet fog that's identical for everyone, or you don't do fog at all, because asymmetric visibility is just RNG, not strategy. Now, exploits. Could a team intentionally foul to trigger video review and get a free breather to game the fatigue system? Sure, until you add a delay of game style ladder. First, cynical review trigger is a warning. Second is a time penalty. Third is a power play situation. Could beaters herd bludgers into a persistent death zone that makes one quadrant of the field unplayable? Only if we let them. So we draw hard bludger flight corridors and cooldown windows where they must reset to neutral zones. And we clarify that repeated attempts to trap an opponent against the harness rigging counts as dangerous play. This is the pattern. Every time we find a loophole, we patch it with one small, very boring line of text instead of a giant new subsystem. That's the value of going hard rule. You don't need a 1,000-page rulebook. You need 10 precise sentences that stop the worst cheese. And once you've survived the edge cases, you can start thinking about something even scarier than a rogue bludger. TV deals, youth leagues, and what happens when money hits the meta. So next, let's build the actual ecosystem this Frankensport would live in. So before we start handing out TV deals and concussion protocols, I want to zoom out and look at what we actually built here. Because this isn't just Quidditch, but with OSHA. It's a whole different sport hiding inside the same aesthetic. Let's dive into the 5 laws as a system. The law of physics is what dragged us out of pure whimsy and into engineering. Instead of brooms go we ended up with harnessed vertical arenas, controlled flight rigs, and speed caps that keep you from turning a seeker into red mist on live broadcast. Momentum matters, fall distance matters, and suddenly the pitch is more like a 3D climbing gym crossed with an air traffic control problem. The law of body came in and asked, cool, but what happens to your spine? That's where we got real safety standards. Impact-rated helmets, fall arrest lines, hard limits on how many full-speed dives you can do before you're benched, actual medical timeouts. Fatigue and injury risk stop being background flavor text and start shaping tactics. Do you keep your star chaser in for the 4th quarter? Or are you saving their shoulders for playoffs? Sacrifice is the law that turned this from a toy into a game. Every advantage has a trade-off now. Heavier armor means slower climbs. Aggressive vertical pressing drains your team's stamina bar faster. Specialized gear is expensive, so league rules have to cap tech so rich teams don't just field Iron Man suits. You get the picture. Power always comes with a bill attached. And coaches live or die on how they pay it. Then Mind stepped in and messed with information. Instead of omniscient seekers and god referees, we've got limited sightlines, comms delays, and refs juggling drones and replay angles. Players have to track threats in 3D space while half blinded by gear and adrenaline. That creates misreads, fake-outs, and those glorious "what was he thinking" moments that sports commentators feast on. And fate is what finally reined in the snitch. No more one tiny golden marble deleting an entire match. Our snitch equivalent has bounded value, spawn rules, and timing windows, so it's a high-impact objective, not a game delete button. Catching it is like pulling off a late-game Hail Mary, not pressing an instant win cheat code. Put all of that together, and the vibe shifts hard. Canon Quidditch is whimsical chaos with a side of child endangerment. This version is a strategic, multi-layered team sport where positioning, stamina management, and objective timing all matter at least as much as one flashy dive. And because we hard-framed it, it starts to look a lot like a sports-flavored Sanderson system. Clear powers, controlled vertical movement, contact, scoring objects. Clear costs, fatigue, risk, limited gear budgets. Clear limits, arena dimensions, time caps, snitch value ceilings. That kind of structure invites creative play instead of loophole hunting. Narratively, that's huge. Character arcs can be about grinding through off-season training, a coach gambling on a controversial substitution rule, or a league scandal over teams abusing safety exemptions. It's still Magic adjacent and fun, but the drama is grounded enough that you don't have to hand-wave every questionable hit as wizard stuff. And because the rules are compact and explicit, you can just drop this system into fanfic, an RPG campaign, or even a real pilot league with some drones and climbing harnesses. I'm going to sketch that ecosystem next. Youth leagues, pro metas, shady sponsors, and one nasty incentive problem that might break the sport before it even launches. So now that we've built this shiny, vaguely OSHA-compliant version of Quidditch for Muggles, I want to throw it back into Hogwarts and see what breaks. Same kids, same drama, totally different rules. Let's dive into Harry's first match and basically run a director's commentary for the alternate timeline. First big change, fixed time. Instead of play until someone dies or the seeker gets lucky, we've got, say, 4 15-minute quarters and a running clock. Harry isn't told, just catch the snitch, don't worry about the score. He's in a real pre-game meeting where Wood is drawing on a chalkboard like a sleep-deprived NFL coordinator. We're down 20, so no risky dives until Q4. If their chasers are pressing high, you pull their seeker away from the play. You get the picture. Harry isn't a golden retriever chasing a marble, he's part of an actual team tactic. Our snitch is lower impact too. It's worth maybe 30 points and does not auto-end the game, so that opening match where Gryffindor wins 170-60, under our rules, it might be a 90-70 grind, where Slytherin can still come back with smart passing. Suddenly, Angelina and Alicia matter as much as Harry, which is great for everyone else that enjoys literally any position that isn't chosen one with wings. Now, cursed broom time. In canon, Harry's Nimbus goes haywire. Everyone squints into the distance and Hermione casually sets a man on fire. Under a tech-based harness system with hard safety rules, that whole scene flips. The curse shows up as a sensor anomaly. Harry's rig starts throttling power, the auto-stabilizer kicks in, and the match AI flags it. Play stops. He's winched down like a malfunctioning theme park ride, while a ref squad does a video review of the feed and equipment logs. Pattern interrupt. That also means Hermione never needs to sprint across the stands and tackle Quirrell. No cloak, no blue fire, no accidental Horcrux handburn. The mystery shifts from who was muttering a spell to who tampered with the firmware. I think you end up with a whole subplot of Percy and Hermione arguing over log files in order to find the saboteur. House Cup dynamics also get way spicier. With a season-long league table and point differentials, every single goal matters across months. That random Hufflepuff blowout? Under our rules, it's not filler, it's your tiebreaker in May. McGonagall can't just gift Harry a broom and say, win the snitch, win the cup. She's sweating about defensive efficiency because Ravenclaw quietly has a plus 120 goal differential. And Oliver Wood, poor, beautiful disaster, Oliver Wood. As a modern coach, with analytics and replay, he absolutely thrives and sort of implodes at the same time. On one hand, he's breaking down drone footage, designing set plays, tracking seeker success rates in different weather. On the other, he's staying up until 3 a.m. calculating expected goals per possession and yelling at first years about their transition defense. You can almost see him trying to explain zone coverage to Fred and George while they weaponize every loophole in the rulebook. The big takeaway is that these rule tweaks don't just repaint the matches, they move the narrative stakes. Harry's not a solo hero ending games on a whim. He's a high-impact player inside a long season where injuries, suspensions, and point spreads all echo into the House Cup and the larger plot. And I'm going to push that ripple even further next. What happens when pro leagues, sponsors, and dark wizards all realize how much money and power is riding on those numbers? So if dark wizards and sponsors suddenly care about Quidditch spreadsheets, what does that actually mean for the people currently sprinting around a public park with PVC between their legs? Let's dive into the very unmagical problem. Our ideal league assumes billion-dollar arenas. Real quad ball barely has money for matching pennies. Most existing teams are student clubs and grassroots leagues. They're sharing fields with soccer practice, not commissioning a vertical stadium with crane rigs and insurance lawyers on retainer. You're not getting a 60-foot tall transparent cylinder with retractable netting when the treasurer is arguing about whether you can afford new cones. So I think the first rule here is respect the constraint. If your fix requires aerospace engineers and Disney Imagineering, it's a North Star, not a purchase order. But that doesn't mean you can't steal the low-hanging fruit. Our whole snitch is a swing, not a nuke math. You can port that tomorrow, drop the value, cap match length, and suddenly, quad ball doesn't have to wait 45 chaotic minutes for a sweaty guy in yellow shorts to decide he's bored. You get the picture. Set a 40 to 50 minute game clock, make the snitch worth say 30 to 40 points, and now chasers grinding out goals actually matters in order to win. Same with fouls. Canon Quidditch treats penalties like improv comedy. Real sports need categories. Quad ball already has a pretty detailed rule book, but you could tighten it toward what we designed. Clear tiers for contact, automatic cards for head hits, standardized review for dangerous plays. Pair that with better safety gear, proper head protection, maybe rib guards, and upgraded mouth guards, and you've imported about half of our no one dies today system without needing a single drone. Long term though, if some streaming platform decides we want the next weird sport, you can absolutely imagine a pilot league that leans into the vertical arena fantasy, harness rigs with assisted lift, modular platforms at different heights, tracked camera drones standing in for bludgers. It's still Muggle physics, but it feels like magic on TV. That pro product would probably diverge from community quad ball the way the NFL diverged from backyard two-hand touch. Same DNA, wildly different spectacle. And that's where the culture fight happens. You'll have players who love that quad ball is co-ed, scrappy, and sort of proudly dorky. They don't want tryouts on reality shows and corporate snitch mascots. Then you'll have others who are like, wait, I can train full-time, get paid, and front flip off a padded platform on ESPN? For everyone else that enjoys watching chaos from the couch, both versions can coexist. But the vibe war is real. So I'm going to frame our whole design as exactly that, a North Star. It's a thought experiment that says, if we took all the silly wizard rules seriously, what's the most coherent, watchable, safe-ish sport we'd get? Nobody needs to bulldoze your campus quad ball pitch. But pieces of this, snitch balance, match structure, gear standards, can trickle down. And if even that sounds tame, stay with me. Because next I want to see what happens when gamblers, corrupt refs, and literal Death Eaters realize this sport is the perfect engine for cheating, sabotage, and quiet little accidents. So before we let the mobsters and Death Eaters start fixing matches, I need to show you the rig we're actually breaking. Because every sabotage story is secretly a design story. What did the rules reward, and what horrible behavior did that invite? I'm going to lay out the 3 big goals that have been fighting in my head this whole time. 1. Keep enough recognizable Quidditch flavor that you look at the field and go, yep, that's the thing from the books. 2. Obey real-world constraints so nobody dies in the first 5 minutes, and the lawyers don't shut it down. 3. Maximize fun and strategic depth, so it's not just cosplay with extra paperwork. Every rule tweak is basically me trying to keep those 3 from stabbing each other. Take the hoops and positions. Cannon gives us 3 hoops per side and 4 roles: chasers, beaters, keeper, seeker. From a pure sports design angle, you could absolutely scrap that. One big net is easier to film, and you don't need a dedicated guy who chases the magic marble. But in order to preserve that instant visual hit, 3 rings in the sky, 7 players in familiar gear, we kept the triple hoop layout and the 4 positions. That's the flavor bucket winning the argument. Then look at the snitch. 1 catch, 150 points, game over. Mathematically, it turns most goals into background noise and turns every match into seeker versus seeker with 6 very athletic extras. So we nuked that. Smaller point value doesn't auto-end the game, and it's on a visible drone track with strict interference rules. That's realism and fairness tag teaming canon. Same with safety, real helmets, harnesses, concussion protocols, speed caps. You get the picture. But we didn't go full OSHA simulator, because that's not fun to watch. We still allow speeds that are a bit spicier than a conservative engineer would like. The harness rigs are rated for higher loads than we routinely hit, and we designed the pitch with big runoff zones so crashes look wild on camera without actually liquefying anyone. It's the same logic as F1 or the NFL controlled danger. Just enough that your brain goes, whoa, without the post-game being a coroner's report. Now, for everyone else that enjoys yelling, "but the book said," at their screen, let's talk canon purism. Some elements are iconic, but unworkable. Endless games with no time limit? Great for mythic storytelling, terrible for TV contracts. Brooms that turn on a dime with no inertia? Fun on the page, impossible without full sci-fi tech. The goal here is not a slavish recreation, it's a playable homage. You recognize the skeleton, even if some of the organs got swapped out. So here's my challenge to you. If you weighted those 3 goals differently, if you cared way more about realism, or you wanted pure chaotic fun, or you're a canon absolutist, what would you change first? Do you crank snitch points back up? Do you ground everyone and make it a weird handball variant? Do you ban half my safety rules and let natural selection curate the league? Hold that thought, because once you see how gamblers and Death Eaters start poking holes in the system, you might rethink which hill you actually want to die on. So let's actually do the thing I threatened you with. I'm going to hand you the design doc and let you break it on purpose. We've made some pretty spicy calls already. We nuked the 150-point snitch and dropped it to a smaller, tiebreaker-style value so that seekers matter, but chasers don't feel like unpaid interns. We put players in harness rigs and winch lines instead of on literal broomsticks, in order to keep the flying vibe without creating a weekly obituary column. And we hard-capped match length, because as fun as an infinite overtime duel sounds in a book, in real life, you have TV slots, stadium staff, and human knees to think about. You get the picture. Each of those choices came out of the same 5 laws we've been hammering all series. Physics, body, mind, sacrifice, fate. I'm not saying we nailed it. I'm saying we made a first draft. Your job is to patch it. Here's the challenge. Pick exactly 1 rule you'd change. Just 1. Don't burn the whole thing down. Surgically rewrite a piece of it and explain your version using those same 5 lenses. So maybe you hate my snitch is exciting but not a nuke idea. Cool. How would you make the snitch exciting but fair? Under physics, do you change its speed, its mass, the way it can juke? Under body, does chasing it spike player fatigue so seekers can't just sprint at 100% for an hour? Under mind, does it mess with perception, like a visual decoy spell baked into the drone AI? What's the sacrifice? Do you give up substitutions when you field a hyper-specialized seeker? And under fate, do you add some structured randomness, like variable snitch spawn windows that both teams know in advance, so it's dramatic without being pure chaos? Quick snapshot so we're on the same page. It's ground-based, co-ed, full contact, and it's actually governed by a real thing called the International Quadball Association, with rulebooks, refs, and World Cups. Players still ride brooms, basically PVC sticks they have to keep between their legs as a handicap. While they throw a volleyball through hoops for goals, peg each other with dodgeballs as bludgers, and chase a human snitch runner who's got a tennis ball and a tail attached to their shorts. You get the picture. And honestly, a bunch of this is really smart. The field is a reasonable size, closer to a small soccer or rugby pitch than the infinite sky void of Hogwarts, so you can actually film it and not lose your chaser in the stratosphere. The mixed gender inclusion rules are also way more thoughtful than anything we get in canon. There are specific maximum players of one gender on pitch caps in order to force real co-ed lineups instead of token subs. I'm going to steal that energy later when we talk about Pro League rosters. The Snitch Runner is another clever hack. Instead of a magic marble with RNG flight patterns, you've got a trained athlete whose job is to evade capture, burn clock, and modulate difficulty by how hard they run. That partially decouples the in-game from pure luck and lets organizers tune things. Snitch comes out at minute X, must stay in bounds, can't just climb a tree and live there, etc. But relative to our premise, Quadball is still very terrestrial. It doesn't even attempt true verticality. No Z-axis strategy, no stacked goal levels, no do I burn my stamina to climb 30 meters for a steal. The broom is cosplay, not equipment. From a physics and body perspective, it's basically rugby with a leg cramp spell baked in. It also inherits some of Canon's snitch imbalance. Catching the tail still ends the game and is worth a huge chunk of points. So teams can end up playing Protect the Seeker instead of run an interesting offense. You can tweak numbers, but structurally the Seeker is still a potential game ender in a way that fights our whole fate balancing project. So I want to use Quadball as a proof of concept. We know you can strip out the literal magic, write hard rules, and get a playable competitive sport that real people train for. Cool. Now let's dive into the version that those players would build if you handed them Pro League money, broadcast tech, and a team of engineers. If we're stuck with real physics, real biology, and the sacrifice costs we already defined, how far can we push toward the fantasy of flying Quidditch without breaking our own laws? And which parts of the dream sport do we have to kill to make it actually watchable? So let's actually put this thing in a box. Or, well, more like a giant hamster cage for athletes. I'm going to sketch the Muggle Quidditch arena the way an engineer, a TV producer, and an insurance lawyer would all grudgingly agree to. Picture a tall cylinder of air, maybe 80 to 100 meters long and 40 wide, rising up 6 or 7 stories, transparent net walls all the way around, roofed over with a lattice of trusses and rigging points. Inside that, you stack vertical tiers of play, ground level, mid-decks at say 8 and 16 meters, and an upper flight band around 24 to 30. Each tier is mostly open air, with catwalks, platforms, and soft barriers, so players can swoop vertically without turning the whole thing into a 3D jungle gym. You get the picture. It's less football field, more 3D skate park, and a fish tank. Canon Quidditch pitches are about 150 meters long and 55 wide, which is great if you have literal magic brooms and an author who can just cut away from the boring bits. For cameras and actual humans, that's a nightmare. So we compress an 8-0 by 40 meter footprint still gives you meaningful spacing for chases, passing lanes, and seeker routes, but you can cover it with a handful of broadcast cameras and some drones without needing like satellite recon. Now, safety. Remember our law of body. How far can you fall before you're paced? With harness rigs or drone chairs, we cap true free fall distance. Every player's tether runs to overhead tracks that auto-catch and auto-lower if the system senses a stall, blackout, or cable failure. Under the highest traffic zones, midfield, goals, seeker perches, you stretch full coverage netting a few meters below the playband, plus thick padding on any hard surfaces. The goal hoops themselves? Foam-wrapped carbon frames on shock-absorbing mounts, so if a chaser slams through one, it flexes instead of turning their ribs into a xylophone. Out of bounds becomes a volume, not a line. If your body or broom rig crosses the outer cylinder, or you drop below ground tier, play stops, or you're forced to reset. That's the physics law again. We define a safe, controlled air volume where bodies are allowed to move, and anything outside that box is literally not part of the sport. Spectators and cameras live outside the bubble. Stands wrap around at multiple heights, angled down into the transparent cylinder so you can track vertical plays without craning your neck off. Camera rails run along the truss work, with a few stabilized drones allowed inside the volume at pre-cleared lanes. And because even with all that, it's still chaos, we lean hard on the law of mind. Augmented reality overlays on the broadcast, and maybe in AR glasses and premium seats, tag each player, draw ghosted passing lanes, and highlight the quaffle, bludgers, and snitch analog in real time. Pattern interrupt. What if you turned all that off? No overlays, no labels, just raw, fast bodies in 3D space. You'd lose the strategic layer instantly. So in order to make this watchable for everyone else that enjoys actually understanding what they're seeing, the arena is designed from day one as a TV set as much as a stadium. All of that sets us up for the next problem. Once you have a 3D cage of semi-flying people, how do you rewrite the actual rules of the game so the snitch doesn't delete 2 hours of strategy with one lucky grab? So, we've got our 3D cage, we've fixed the cameras, and we've bullied the snitch into not speedrunning the entire match. Cool. Now we hit the next very boring, very important question. How are these idiots actually in the air without magic? Let's dive into the 3 big options: overhead harness rigs, drone platforms, and wind tunnel style fans. Each one solves a problem and creates about 6 new ones. You get the picture. Option 1. Overhead harness rigs on tracks. Think stunt wires from a Marvel movie, but standardized. Speed-wise, you can probably push players to 25-30 miles per hour in straight lines, which is already, you're going to the hospital if you faceplant territory. Maneuverability is decent but constrained. You can swing, you can swoop, but your tightest turn is limited by track layout and how fast the rig can brake without turning your spine into a physics lesson. Failure mode? A cable snaps or a trolley jams, and the worst case is a short fall plus a sudden jerk. Bad, but survivable with redundancies, auto brakes, and constant inspection. Option 2, multi-rotor drone platforms with harnesses. Basically, each player is standing on a flying Roomba of death. These win on maneuverability. They can strafe, climb, and yaw like a helicopter that passed its ADHD test with flying colors. Speed could easily hit 40+ miles per hour, but that's where the rules start screaming. A motor fails at that speed, you don't just have an oopsie, you auger into the pitch while 8 spinning blades try to redistribute your limbs. You can cage the rotors, add parachutes, emergency auto land, but each fix adds weight, cost, and new ways for things to break. Option 3, vertical fan or wind tunnel systems. Imagine a circular river of rising air around the pitch that keeps you hovering. Super safe in one sense. If a fan dies, you drift down, not plummet. But your top speed is limited by how hard you can lean before the airflow stops holding you up. So you get more floaty ballet Quidditch and less full contact missile tag. Tight turns are also weird. You're sort of surfing turbulence instead of carving the air. Now, the psychology piece. Quidditch, without the broom silhouette, feels wrong. The stick between the knees is dumb and iconic, which is kind of the franchise in a nutshell. So I'm going to assume we slap decorative broom shells onto whatever rig we pick. With overhead tracks, the wires are above you, so the audience brain just goes, "Oh yeah, flying brooms," and politely ignores the hardware. Drones and wind tunnels keep shoving the tech in your face. The sport stops being broom game and starts being jetpack rugby or indoor skydiving dodgeball. Not bad, just different. Maintenance and logistics are where the accountants kill your dreams. Overhead rigs mean steel, motors, sensors, and a small army of rigging techs doing daily inspections, load tests, and part replacements on a fixed schedule. Drones add battery cycles, prop wear, firmware updates, and a pit crew per player. Fan systems guzzle electricity, chew through bearings, and need constant airflow calibration so one side of the pitch isn't secretly on easy mode. So for a league that wants spectacle, control, and not getting sued into oblivion, our provisional winner is overhead harness rigs with cosmetic broom shells. They're slower and more on rails than Canon, but they're inspectable, upgradable, and standardized in a way a governing body can actually write rules around. And, speaking of rules, once you lock players to tracks and cap their speed, that quietly rewires every position. What does a seeker look like when they can't just dive to terminal velocity? How do beaters work when your arc is literally bolted to the ceiling? We're going to break the whole playbook next. So if the tracks and harnesses blew up the broom meta, the next sacred cow on the chopping block is the quaffle. Because right now, it's basically a slightly sad volleyball that controls the entire scoreboard until a golden marble shows up and says, "None of this mattered." You get the picture. Canon first. In the books, the quaffle is this red, slightly deflated ball so chasers can grip it one-handed, and every time you yeet it through a hoop, you get 10 points. That's it. No spin, no arc, no real description beyond kinda squishy and easy to hold, which works when you can hand-wave everything with magic, but collapses the second we bolt you into a shoulder harness and point cameras at your face. So, let's dive into the physical object. I'm going to build this like a hybrid between a handball and a futsal ball, about 20 to 22 centimeters across, so you can palm it in a glove but it's not Nerf-sized. Weight in the 350-450 gram range. Heavy enough that it doesn't get bullied by air currents or random drone wash. Light enough that a miscatch at 30 kilometers an hour doesn't instantly reconstruct your nose. Surface, deep pebble texture like a basketball, plus raised seams so gloved hands have something to bite into. Material matters too. Canon leather is a concussion delivery system. We swapped to a multi-layer foam core with a slightly dead bounce, wrapped in synthetic leather that plays well in rain and doesn't become a brick in the cold. Think soft enough that getting pinged in the face is embarrassing, not hospitalizing, but still legit enough that pro chasers can rip sidearm rockets for everyone else that enjoys watching slow-mo replays. Now, goals. In the books, you've got 3 big hoops on poles, high up, and that's about as specific as Rowling gets. Our vertical arena changes everything. We can't just stick 3 hula hoops in the sky and call it a day. I think we go with rings about 1 meter in diameter, mounted on vertical rails so each set can slide up and down a limited range. Static goals are fine for kids' leagues, but if the whole sport is supposed to be 3D chess with people, giving keepers a little vertical adjustment opens up real tactics. Check this against the law of body and the law of physics. A 400-gram ball at, say, 20 meters per second is spicy but survivable with a helmet and face guard. You can still have full court lobs, no look behind the back passes, and those dramatic last-second cross-arena shots without casually generating CTE. And because players are track-bound, we can literally model the worst-case collision angles and cap maximum throwing zones near cameras and ref drones. Scoring-wise, we're keeping the 10-point goal as the atomic unit. That's the familiar anchor. But the way those 10s stack up against the snitch, against match length, against overtime, that's about to get nuked from orbit. And if we're nuking scoring from orbit, we also have to talk about the other thing trying to nuke players from orbit: bludgers. Cannon bludgers are basically medieval cannonballs with anger issues. Heavy iron spheres, magically enchanted to hunt players, hit like a truck, and occasionally yeet you 40 feet off a broom. Harry gets a broken arm, multiple near-death spirals, and that's with plot armor. You scale that to a full league schedule, and yeah, you get the picture. Everyone has CTE by age 22. So I'm going to keep the fantasy of there's a murderous ball chasing you, but strip out the part where your insurance company screams. In Muggle Quidditch, bludgers are smart projectiles, not free-flying death orbs. Think foam core or air-filled shells. about dodgeball size with embedded sensors and LEDs. They're light enough that a direct face shot is embarrassing, not life-altering, but dense enough that you still really don't want to eat one at full sprint. Instead of enchantments, we give them hardware and rails. Each bludger launches from an automated cannon pod or runs on a curved tethered track that loops under and around the field volume. No true free flight, no random trajectory into the stands. The system knows player positions from harness trackers. It can arc a shot through a lane, but it's capped on speed and angle, so it never exceeds, say, safe lacrosse ball impact levels. You get the tension of something hunting you without the OSHA violations. And the damage is rules-based, not bone-based. A clean sensor-confirmed hit to your torso might cut your harness speed to 50% for 15 seconds. A hit to your arm might lock you out of quaffle handling until you tag a reset beacon. 2 rapid hits? You're in a 60-second penalty box while your team plays shorthanded. No concussions, but suddenly your keeper is crawling in bullet time while 3 chasers bear down. Fun, beaters still exist, because for everyone else that enjoys chaos, this is the fun job. They get padded bats with big friendly surfaces designed to redirect, not spike. The bats have swing zone gyros. If you try to windmill at head height or clip another player's harness, the bat hard locks and the ref drone flags you. Beaters are playing positional air hockey with incoming bludgers, not live-action Gallagher smashing watermelons. This lines up with the law of body and the law of sacrifice. Your body isn't being shattered every match, but your stamina, positioning, and decision-making absolutely are on the line. Do you eat a bludger to protect your seeker's lane and risk a slow-mo debuff during a fast break? Do you pull a beater back on defense and sacrifice offensive pressure? How many virtual injuries can your lineup juggle before the whole formation collapses? And because all of this is software-defined, we can scale difficulty by league. Youth mode with gentle arcs and short debuffs, pro mode with nasty crossfire patterns and brutal penalty timers. Which raises the next big question. How do you actually coach and design tactics around this many moving parts without the game turning into pure chaos? So, if the last section was about juggling 12 moving parts without dropping your chaser, this one is about the single tiny piece that can delete your entire game plan. Let's talk about the snitch, because canon Quidditch is secretly Seeker Ball featuring some guys in the background doing cardio. Let's dive into the actual rules first. In the books, the Golden Snitch is worth 150 points. Catch it, and the game ends instantly. No overtime, no one last possession, just hard stop. And because it's this tiny, hyper-agile magic ball that only the Seeker is allowed to seriously interact with, it's basically uncounterable. You can tackle the Seeker, you can foul them, but you can't play defense on the Snitch itself. It's the sports equivalent of a nuclear button strapped to one player's wrist. Now, I'm going to walk you through what that does to scoring, because this is where it really breaks. Imagine a pretty normal match. One team is up 80-30. That's 8 goals to 3. Respectable lead. But if the losing team's Seeker grabs the Snitch, they jump 150 points and win 180-80. All that chaser work just got turned into decorative background animation for the highlight reel. Flip it. Say it's a blowout, 230-40. That's brutal. But the trailing team still wins if they grab the Snitch and the other team doesn't score at least 9 more goals before that happens. You get the picture. Unless the gap is more than 150, the only scoreboard that matters is, has anyone caught the shiny thing yet? And that leads into the narrative problem. If this is how the rules work, every rational team should build their entire identity around the Seeker. You'd draft like an NFL team that only cares about its quarterback and then some warm bodies. You'd park 2 beaters as full-time bodyguards. You'd design plays where chasers intentionally stall in order to buy your Seeker more hunting time, and every training montage would just be catch the tiny drone or you're cut. But in the books, half the time the Seeker is just sort of also there. The strategy talk is about formations and passing, even though mathematically they're side quests. For everyone else that enjoys watching sports as, sports, this is a broadcast nightmare. Games can end with zero buildup. You can have this tense back and forth, and then snap. The snitch gets grabbed in a random scrum the camera's barely caught. Imagine the NBA, where sometimes a bench guy can sink a secret 60-point shot from the locker room and auto-end the game. Why would fans invest in tracking possession stats, beautiful passing, or any of that if they know the snitch is going to overwrite the entire narrative arc at any second? So the design problem is clear. We want to keep the snitch as this iconic high-tension spell object. Because it is cool, it's great TV, but we need rules that stop it from trivializing literally everything else. How do you make it matter a lot without making it the only thing that matters? And what happens to coaching, league structure, and even player salaries when we start messing with that sacred 150-point sudden death button? So let's actually push that big red button. I'm going to start with the cleanest, most boring-looking fix, because it secretly does a ton of work. We just nerf the snitch. Baseline model. The snitch is worth, say, 30 to 50 points, and catching it does not automatically end the game. That's it. Same shiny golden bug, same acrobatic chase, but now it's basically a super goal instead of a nuclear bomb. If a regular goal is 10 points, a 40-point snitch is like hitting a 4-pointer in basketball that also gets you a free throw. Huge swing, not an auto win. Immediately, fate calms down. The whole season doesn't hinge on one coin flip catch, because you can still lose 170-150, even if you grab it. The sacrifice law gets more interesting too. As a seeker, do you peel off to chase the snitch and leave your defense outnumbered, knowing that giving up 2 quick goals might erase your big moment? Or do you hang back, eat your ego, and protect a fragile lead? You get the picture, but we can get spicier. Let's dive into timing. Right now, in canon, the snitch is active from second 1, which is how you get those anticlimactic match ends in 5 minutes, everyone go home situations. So what if the snitch only turns on in the last third of the match? Fixed game clock, say 60 minutes. For the first 40, seekers are just auxiliary chasers or defensive sweepers. At minute 40, the snitch is released and now the endgame starts. That keeps regular scoring relevant for most of the match and lines up with mind law. Seekers have to manage focus over time instead of just tunneling on gold from the whistle. It also makes broadcasts way better. Viewers know, okay, snitch window is coming up. Don't switch channels. For everyone else that enjoys yelling at sports, you now get a guaranteed tension ramp instead of RNG. Pattern interrupt. Or we get weird and go multi-snitch. Imagine 3 20-point snitches, each released at preset intervals. Minute 20, 40, 60. They despawn if not caught in, say, 5 minutes. Suddenly, fate isn't a single moment, it's a series of gambles. Do you overcommit to the first snitch and risk going down 40 points in goals while you whiff? Or intentionally ignore the early ones, betting your offense can build a cushion before the final, most contested bug appears? This model absolutely pumps drama, but we have to check it against our laws. Does it keep regular scoring relevant? Yes. Does it avoid coin flip endings? Mostly, though a last, second, third snitch could still feel swingy. Does it create meaningful seeker trade-offs? Oh yeah. You're juggling 3 high-impact windows. Personally, I think the sweet spot for Muggle Quidditch is a hybrid. 1 40-point snitch, no auto-end, that only appears after a fixed time mark. That gives us a clear early game, mid-game, and snitch endgame. Keeps the math sane and still lets commentators scream when someone lays out for the catch. In the next section, we're going to plug that into full match structure subs, time limits, overtime, and see what completely breaks when actual leagues and TV money get involved. Okay, so we've got our late spawning, non-auto ending snitch locked in. Cool toy. But now we have to answer the boring, terrifying question that actually decides if this sport works. How do the numbers shake out so goals matter and the snitch isn't just a shiny coin flip? Let's start with the one thing Rowling accidentally did right. 10-point quaffle goals. I'm going to keep that. 10 is a beautiful little base unit. Your average fan can scoreboard math it in their head. A commentator can scream, "They're down 3 scores," without pulling out a calculator. And kids in the stands can sort of feel the comeback arc without understanding advanced statistics. 10 points is basically the metric system of sports scoring. You get the picture. Now plug our new snitch into that, say the catch is worth like 30 points and does not end the game. Suddenly, you can't just tank defense, let the other team run up 18 goals, and pray your seeker is anime protagonist coded. If you're down 180-40, that 30-point catch is a nice bump, not divine intervention. In order to win, you need consistent offense, real defense, and a seeker who's adding pressure, not erasing your sins. Watch how the incentives flip. Chasers care about every possession because the other team's seeker might snag a snitch at any time after the spawn window and swing momentum by a few scores. Keepers can't mentally check out because A, our seeker will bail us out. Coaches have to decide, do you pull a tired seeker for a fresh one and risk a catch window, or trust your conditioning? For everyone else that enjoys actual team sports, this is where Quidditch finally starts to feel like a game and not a narrative device. To juice drama without breaking the math, we can add controlled bonuses. Consecutive goal streaks, 3 unanswered goals, triggers a temporary +5 per goal until the other team scores, rewarding runs but not letting one lucky play snowball into a 100-point avalanche. Serious foul, power play, 2 minutes where the offending team loses a chaser, so lanes open up and you get hockey-style chaos. End of period, maybe the last 2 minutes of regulation have a 1.5x multiplier on quaffle goals only. So late game drives are electric, but the snitch doesn't secretly become Exodia again. Now we stress test against fate, capital F. Could any single event decide the match 90% of the time? A snitch catch is 30. A max streak might stack an extra 20 to 30 over a couple minutes. A power play might net you 2 or 3 extra goals if you're clinical. All of those are big, swingy moments, but none of them are a guaranteed hard reset on a 100-point deficit unless you are already getting obliterated. Fate can nudge, it can't one-shot. And this is where I want to tee up the next problem. Time. Because all of these incentives only make sense if we decide how long a match actually runs, what overtime looks like when the snitch is still live, and how league standings treat a snitch catch versus a blowout win. So next, let's dive into clocks, golden goal nightmares, and what TV networks are going to scream about when a 3-hour broom marathon eats the evening news slot. So let's talk about the dumbest quiet choice Quidditch makes. It has no idea when to stop. Canon's game lasts until the snitch is caught is cute for a book, but if you're a league scheduler, that's a horror movie. You can't sell TV rights to a sport where one match is 12 minutes and the next one is 3 days unless you hate advertisers and also sleep. From a body perspective, it's even worse. High-intensity flying, constant collisions, tiny reaction windows at 60+ kilometers an hour, and you're telling me there is no hard cap? How many hours of that can a human nervous system actually survive without turning to jelly? We already have real sports that push limits. Playoff hockey overtimes, 5-set tennis marathons. You get the picture. But those are edge cases, not the default design baked into the rules. So I'm going to put the snitch on a clock. We need a fixed match length first. Then we decide how the golden marble interacts with it. The big 3 options are 4 15-minute quarters, 3 20-minute periods, or 2 30-minute halves. 4 quarters gives you tons of natural breaks for subs, replays, and yes, those delightful targeted broom insurance commercials. 3 periods feels hockey-ish. Longer continuous flow, fewer hard resets, more tactical stamina management. 2 30s are brutal but simple. They make every minute feel heavy, but they also demand monster conditioning. In order to keep this playable, I'd probably lean towards something like 3 20-minute periods for pro leagues. That's 60 minutes of game clock, which, with stoppages, lands you in a predictable 2-hour broadcast window. It's long enough that strategy matters, short enough that your Seeker's rotator cuff doesn't explode out of their harness. And because we're on harness rigs or drone assist systems, you have to factor in operator fatigue too. The tech crew are basically half the team. Now, overtime. We want drama, not hostage situations. Option 1, sudden death mini periods, 5 minutes each, full rules live, first score of any kind wins. Option 2, first to X additional points, say first to 30 combined overtime points, which keeps the whole team engaged instead of just one hero. Option 3, for everyone else that enjoys chaos, a shootout-style snitch duel where Seekers face off in a constrained lane with a dedicated snitch drone. Best of 3 catches. I think that's your all-star game gimmick, not your regular season decider. But you can see the appeal. Body and sacrifice check. How many minutes of true red zone effort can a harnessed aerial athlete sustain? Most elite field sports top out around 10 to 15 minutes of peak sprint effort spread across a match. So you build rotations, line changes every few minutes, rolling substitutions, maybe even a power play style rule where losing a player to a card forces shorter benches and more fatigue tax. The sport should feel like magic, but the bodies still pay, and TV is going to love this. Predictable runtimes, clean quarter or period breaks for ads, and built-in narrative arcs, early feeling out, mid-game adjustment, end-game snitch pressure. The network knows if they slot Quidditch from 7 to 9, it's not eating the evening news. The league knows back-to-backs are survivable. Fans know they can actually get home on the last train. But once you fix time, you expose a new problem. If the match doesn't auto-end on a catch, what does the snitch actually do to the scoreboard? And how do teams abuse that? Because the moment you put a number on it, every coach is going to start doing dark math. So if coaches are doing dark math with the snitch, they're going to start doing even darker math with players. Because Canon Quidditch has this wild thing where it pretends to be a team sport with a 7-person skeleton crew and basically no bench. Let's dive into what Rowling actually gives us. You've got 3 chasers, 2 beaters, 1 keeper, 1 seeker. That's it. Substitutions are this vague, hand-wavy idea. Sometimes they mention a reserve, sometimes they don't, and Hogwarts treats injuries like, walk it off or die, kid. For a school that can field entire houses, they act like they're running a Sunday rec league with whoever showed up. Or maybe you think the harness system is cowardly and you want more contact. Great. What's your dream arena layout if players can collide midair at bike crash speeds? How high are the safe zones? Where do you put nets, padding, ref drones? In order to pass the body test, how are you preventing concussions instead of just collecting them? Under physics, are you limiting max speed or acceleration on the winches? Under sacrifice, do teams risk a penalty timer every time they initiate high-impact tackles? You can make it brutal, but it has to be survivable. Pattern interrupt. What if your only change was no fixed game clock? Does that sound tiny? It's not. Walk it through the laws. Physics and body say fatigue and weather become huge. Mine says focus and tilt start deciding championships. Fate says streaks, slumps, and weird comebacks get amplified. This isn't a right or wrong test. This is collaborative world building. Real sports evolve like this all the time. Rules get patched, metas shift, someone breaks the game, we patch again. For everyone else that enjoys systems design, this is your playground. Drop your 1 rule change in the comments with your 5 law breakdown. I'm going to be pulling standout designs for a follow-up segment, or maybe a whole video, where we run your versions through the grinder and through the gamblers and Death Eaters you're about to meet next. And speaking of gamblers and Death Eaters, let's talk kids leagues. Because if this system only works for billionaire pros in Sky Stadiums, it's not a sport, it's a theme park stunt. I want something your local middle school, your community center, and like that one overachieving summer camp can actually run without summoning OSHA in a robe. So, youth and amateur variants. Step 1, get off the roof. Ground-based Quidditch becomes the default for schools. Same positions, same scoring, same 5 laws, but we dial the parameters way down. Brooms are now low-height harness rigs, or even just color-coded lanes on a turf field. No full tackles, just 2 hand tags and wrap but don't drive contact rules, like flag football's slightly meaner cousin. Smaller fields, lighter bludgers, time-capped games. You get the picture. Same game loop, less trip to the ER energy. For everyone else that enjoys chaos in controlled doses, I'm going to spin off mini-games. Because once you have a rules engine, you can fork it. Bludger-only dodgeball mode, no quaffle, no snitch, just 2 teams and a swarm of drone bludgers tracking jersey chips, with the law of body capping how many impacts per player before you're auto-benched for concussion protocol. Or Seeker duels, 1 narrow alleyway, mirrored harness tracks, 30-second snitch releases, and the law of mind cranked up so focus strain and decision fatigue actually matter over a best-of-7 series. Urban arenas get 3v3 half-court style Quidditch. Think basketball court with a single hoop tower, 1 bludger, 1 micro snitch on a rail system overhead. Short rounds, shot clocks, possession arrows, and a scoring spread where the snitch is like 20 points instead of delete game. It's basically street ball with a physics exam attached. Accessibility is where this really stops being a gimmick and starts being a real sport ecosystem. Adaptive leagues use seated rigs, wheeled frames, or full ground-based play with tracking vests and haptic belts instead of aerial harnesses. The law of mass still runs the show. Your rig weight, your turning radius, your acceleration all have to be tuned, but we can shift the law of sacrifice away from risk your spine and toward accept tighter speed caps or more generous foul resets. So disabled athletes are playing the same magic, just at a different slope. The key thing is that the 5 laws don't vanish at lower intensity. They just move their sliders. Youth League? Law of body is strict on fatigue and contact limits. Law of fate maybe auto-ends blowouts early. Elite Seeker Duel? Law of mind and sacrifice go up. You're trading long-term focus and reaction time for short-term hero plays. Same engine, different builds. And that's the point. A well-designed system should scale. If your Quidditch only works as a one-off World Cup spectacle, the moment you add a second season, the meta breaks. So we build it from the start to support Pee Wee Saturday scrims, adaptive nationals, and pro Sky Leagues using the same rule DNA. Which raises a slightly terrifying question. What happens when money, betting markets, and less than ethical actors start poking at those rules on purpose? That's not just a Quidditch problem, by the way. The moment you start treating any fictional game like a real sport, the sharks smell blood in the water. Or, Padracer coolant in the sand. So let's zoom out for a second. I've been using these 5 laws on Harry Potter magic, but the framework is basically portable. You can pick it up and drop it on any messy fictional sport or system, and it will start screaming immediately. Pod racing from Star Wars, the Hunger Games arena, bending tournaments in Avatar: The Last Airbender? You get the picture. Take pod racing. On-screen hits, go fast, don't explode, Anakin wins because destiny. If I'm going to run that through the same rules we use for Quidditch, suddenly we have to talk about physics and body in a way Star Wars really doesn't want us to. What's the G-force on those turns? How many seconds before a human neck just taps out? In order to keep it barely survivable, you need harness tech, neck braces, blackout limits, and race marshals with the authority to red flag a lap the second someone's pod starts overheating like a microwave burrito. And then fate strolls in like, cool race, shame if the chosen one auto-won it. Do we let the force tilt probability, or do we introduce a sacrifice rule where every miraculous save costs something? Extra wear on the engine. Micro concussions the med droids can see, but the crowd can't. A finite pool of lucky breaks that betting markets start tracking like a stat line. Same thing with the Hunger Games. Right now, the arena is basically a sadistic theme park where the gamekeepers can do anything at any time because vibes. You drop our fate and sacrifice laws on that, and suddenly the capital has to budget its cruelty. Every intervention has a cost. Want a surprise firestorm? That eats power reserves, shortens the games, and maybe statistically boosts underdogs, which freaks out sponsors. You start getting spreadsheets. You start getting rules of engagement. It becomes less evil wizard did it, and more evil but internally consistent bureaucracy did it, which is darker and I think way more interesting. And for everyone else that enjoys yelling at their TV during pro bending and Legend of Korra, you already know that sport is begging for a physics and mind pass. How much water mass can a bender move before their joints give out? How many high-intensity bouts before focus drops and friendly fire becomes a real thing? That's basically what this channel is for, taking beloved fictional nonsense and lovingly over-engineering it into coherent systems with actual stakes. So if you want this 5-law treatment on pod racing, the Hunger Games, pro bending, or something completely different, tell me in the comments which game or magic you want broken and rebuilt next. Because once we've patched Quidditch and picked our next victim, we still have to deal with the real nightmare. What happens when our perfectly balanced Muggle Quidditch rules hit real-world money, cheating tech, and full-on sports scandals? So let's zoom out for a second before we unleash the gambling apps and performance-enhancing broom polish. We started this whole thing with a pretty simple diagnosis. Canon Quidditch is a blast to read, but as an actual sport, it's kind of a math crime. You've got the snitch being worth 150 points and auto-ending the game, which means most of the time the only thing that matters is does your seeker touch the shiny marble first. You've got theoretically infinite games, because Rowling just casually mentions matches lasting days. And you've got lethal safety standards where teenagers fall 100 feet out of the sky and everyone's like, wow, what a match, and moves on. You get the picture. So I'm going to recap what we actually did to fix it before we throw this into the real world. First, we caged the chaos. Instead of free-range sky murder, we built harnessed vertical arenas. Climbing Gym meets Rocket League. Players are clipped into guided tracks and winches, so you still get that three-dimensional dogfight vibe without terminal velocity lawn darts. Then, we demurdered the bludgers. In canon, they're sentient cannonballs. In Muggle Quidditch, they become smart, padded impact drones with speed caps and collision sensors. They still slam into you, they still mess with your passing lanes, but they're not breaking ribs every other possession. That's not soft. That's how every real sports governing body writes its rules in order to not get sued into oblivion. We also went straight at the snitch problem. No more one catch ends everything. No more 150-point nuke. It's now a timed repeating objective with a smaller point value that shows up in specific windows. Catching it matters, but it's one scoring vector among several, not a golden oops, your last hour was pointless button. On top of that, we hard-capped match length and baked in modern fouls and substitutions. Fixed periods, clocks that stop, concussion checks, rolling subs, clear penalties for stuff like undercutting or harness yanking. Basically, we dragged Quidditch from Victorian Death Carnival to something your insurance company might grudgingly approve. And under all of this is that same 5-law framework we've been using on every spell and magical artifact. Physics, body, mind, sacrifice, fate. This wasn't just me throwing vibes at the wall. The law of physics kept the vertical arena and drone speeds sane. The law of body forced fatigue and injury rules. The law of mind shaped cognitive load for seekers, sacrifice limited ridiculous tech upgrades, and fate gave us room for rare dramatic moments without breaking the league. That backbone kept every decision from turning into ad hoc fanfic. What we end up with is a new sport that actually has an identity. It's fast, vertical, and multi-object. You're juggling quaffle attacks, bludger control, and timed snitch windows all at once. Team play matters, seekers matter, keepers and beaters matter, but nothing single-handedly decides the outcome on a coin flip. It's built to have a meta, to evolve to be watchable for everyone else that enjoys real sports strategy. and not just broomstick aesthetics. And look, this is just one coherent version. It's not the one true Quidditch. So let's dive into the real fun next. What happens when this rule-tight Muggle Quidditch hits TV deals, cheating tech, and full-blown sports scandals? And this is where some of you are already drafting angry comments. Because once you bolt TV deals and cheating tech onto Quidditch, it stops feeling like wizard chaos and starts feeling like the NBA with cosplay. Some of you love that. You want standings. You want a meta. You want to argue in the subreddit about whether zone defense hard counters double chaser stacks. For you, this version finally clicks. The game stops being a narrative prop and starts being a sport you could actually watch, bet on, and maybe even train for. It becomes immersive because the rules stop wiggling around every time the plot needs a dramatic dive. For everyone else that enjoys the pure nonsense of 150 points, random ending, try not to die, this probably feels like I took your whimsical flying fever dream and put it through airport security. Shoes off, liquids in a bag, no bludgers over 3 ounces. You get the picture. But I'm going to argue that constraints don't automatically kill the magic. Sometimes they dial it up. When you know how fast a harness can safely accelerate, or how much force a keeper's pads can absorb, that one impossible-looking save suddenly feels earned instead of the author waved a wand and said sports. The same way we made Wingardium Leviosa cooler by making it actually exhausting. Pinning Quidditch to physics and safety rules can make the big moments land harder. Think about Harry and the Snitch. In canon, so often it's all or nothing. He catches it, the score jumps 150. Roll credits. The emotional math is basically, did Harry vibe hard enough today? The rest of the team's work can feel like background noise. Compare that to a system where the Snitch is still huge, still iconic, but it's a swing inside a tighter point band, or a timed bonus, or a playoff tiebreaker. Harry's clutch catch matters, but only because his chasers have been grinding out goals and his beaters have kept him from being turned into mid-air paste. Is that more dramatic for you, or less? Would you rather watch a desperate seeker diving for an all-or-nothing marble, or a final 2-minute sequence where every pass, every tackle, and the snitch chase all feed one scoreboard that actually adds up? Both are valid. They just scratch different narrative itches. And that's the real thing I want you to sit with. There is no single correct ratio of chaos to rules. Some stories thrive on vibes and miraculous brooms from nowhere. Others get better when you can run the numbers and realize, oh, they had to pull the seeker early or they'd lose on differential. Different audiences, different magic. So whether you love this grounded version or you absolutely hate it, your reaction is part of the fun of poking at fictional systems. And we're not done poking yet, because next I want to see what happens when fans, sponsors, and rule lawyers start really stress testing this sport. And this is where you come in, because this whole thing was basically one giant thought experiment. Take Quidditch, plug all the magical plot holes with real-world rules, and just see what kind of sport falls out the bottom. We've done my version of that, now I want to see yours. So I'm going to hand you the commissioner's whistle. You're in charge of Muggle Quidditch Season 1. First move. What's the very first rule you'd change, add, or absolutely yeet into the sun from the system we just built? Do you delete the last scraps of snitch dominance? Do you crank the contact way up and accept the concussion protocols? Do you, outlaw broom drones over 30 miles an hour because insurance companies start screaming? To keep the comments from turning into one giant howler, I want to try something a little structured. If you're tweaking physics, start with physics tweak. So for example, physics tweak, the harness rigs can't accelerate faster than an F1 car, so chasers have to actually draft and slingshot instead of just zooming vertically forever. If you're messing with luck, story beats, or the whole fate likes drama thing, start with fate tweak. Like fate tweak, championship games can't end on a snitch catch unless the score is within 30. So destiny forces those nail-biter finishes. You get the picture. You can also sneak in body tweak for injury and fatigue ideas, or mind tweak if you want to play with crowd pressure, ref bias, or how sponsors mess with players' heads. But the big two I'll be watching are physics tweak and fate tweak. That way, I can actually find your ideas later instead of scrolling for 3 hours going, wait, who suggested the cursed sponsorship contracts? And yeah, this is the part where YouTube wants me to say the thing. So, if you want more of these deep dive system redesigns, where we take a comfy piece of nostalgia and stress test the magic until it squeaks, treat the like button as a vote. Subscribes are basically you commissioning the next rule set. Shares are you recruiting more rule lawyers, so I don't have to be the only nerd trying to balance golden marbles and liability waivers. Pattern interrupt. If you've been lurking for 4 videos and never commented, this is your penalty shot. Drop one change, just one, even if it's tiny, like physics tweak. Bludgers have to obey air resistance so they eventually slow down. That's exactly the level of granularity real sports leagues argue about in off-season meetings. I'm not just crowdsourcing for fun, by the way. The plan is to take the smartest, wildest, or most cursed ideas from the comments and roll them into a Quidditch 2.1 inches follow-up, either a whole video where we rebuild the meta again, or a downloadable rulebook you can actually run a league with. So, Commissioner, your desk is waiting. What's your first rule change? So, Commissioner, your desk is waiting. What's your first rule change? While you're drafting that in your head, I'm going to point you to 2 places. First, if you want more let's bully Harry Potter with math energy, I've got a whole playlist where we do this to basically every iconic spell in the series. Wingardium that actually hurts. Time turners that cook you like atmospheric re-entry. Polyjuice that's one bad dose away from organ failure. You get the picture. Click that if you want the full 5 Laws of Magic experience. Second, for everyone else that enjoys the more systems nerd side of this, there's the game design and world building deep dive playlist. That's where we take fictional worlds, strip them for parts, and rebuild them with real rules. Economy, physics, politics, tournament brackets, all of it. If you liked watching Quidditch go from vibes to OSHA paperwork, that's absolutely your corner of the channel. This is kind of the whole niche here. We take soft, cozy, beloved magic and stress test it until it either snaps or evolves into something that could sit next to Sanderson-style hard magic without crying. Sometimes that's a spell, sometimes it's a sport, sometimes it's an entire government that somehow runs on 3 laws and a prophecy. If it's fictional and runs on vibes, I want to see what happens when we plug it into actual physics, biology, and game design rules. And yes, Quidditch is not the last stop on that train. Because if you thought Muggles playing wizard dodgeball was cursed, wait until we ask. What if the Tri-Wizard tournament had an actual safety committee, like a real one, with liability insurance, risk assessments, and some poor intern trying to explain to Dumbledore why unlimited dragons is not an acceptable line item? How many tasks survive? How many champions don't? Let's dive into that next. Here's where you come in. Comments on this video are not just yay algorithm decorations. They're basically the writer's room. You want Tri-Wizard with safety rules? Say it. You want a whole episode where we fix the Fidelius charm with actual information theory? Pitch it. You want to know how a Ministry of Magic would function if it had to obey basic economics and not just plot convenience? Argue for it. The weirder and more specific you get, the more likely it is to end up on the board. So, click into the Quidditch and Magic Rules playlists. Drop your cursed what-ifs below, and subscribe if you haven't so you don't miss whatever nightmare we build next. I'll keep breaking your favorite worlds. You keep making it harder. See you in the next obsession.